Konoha, Reviving Senju, starting with Concubines. Author, Vortex. Chapter 326, Departure, Return to Soul Society. After hearing Sui Feng's explanation, Nellie Eel's face turned red instantly. Although she has been promoted to Vasto Lord again now, Nellie Eel is also very embarrassed when recalling her previous form. Actually, I couldn't do this kind of thing in my previous body shape. These are all activities that can only be performed in a shape after a Rancor. Hearing Nellie Eel's shy explanation, Tanziksenai understood the meaning immediately. That said, it has nothing to do with being beyond reach at all. Does it? Although very shy, Nellie Eel nodded. It really doesn't matter, and 500, as commandos a Rancor, can do this kind of thing, but because of his long-standing habits, he can't find anyone to cooperate. So, this kind of thing only exists in theory. Senju Starry Night listened to Nellie Eel's explanation, and couldn't help joking. You also said that there were no experiments before because there were no partners. Then now I can actually be your partner. As soon as Nellie Eel turned her head, she saw Senju Kusanai's serious face, and the expression and tone obviously didn't sound like a joke. Looking at the serious Senju Starry Night, Nellie Eel blushed again in an instant. Although I have seen many unexpected events, including the parting of life and death, I was later called Xu. From a lonely and weak woman wandering in commando, she has evolved to the highest level Minos Grand Vasto Lord who dominates the entire Void Palace. God knows what Nellie Eel has been through. Even so, she still didn't think that she would experience this kind of thing one day. After all, she was single when she was alive, and she felt regretful that she hadn't experienced such a thing when she just died. After experiencing thousands of years of silence, Nellie Eel, who mentioned this kind of thing again, was full of expectations. Seeing Nellie Eel's flushed little face, Senju Kusanai also murmured in his heart. It is said that at 30 you are like a wolf, at 40 you are like a tiger, and at 50 you can sit on the ground and absorb dirt. If you continue to count according to this calculation, Nellie Eel, who has experienced thousands of years, is probably not as simple as a sucker. I'm afraid I'm going to treat everyone as jelly juice and suck it dry. Although he was a little worried, Senju Kusanai stood up without hesitation. Miss Nilu, you should also know how powerful the power of being a Vasto Lord is to others. Looking at the entire commando, even if it reaches the level of a Duchess, I am afraid that it can only be achieved after devouring countless souls. Among those Rancors in Xuai Palace, is there anyone else who can be your partner? Senju Kusanai uttered a sole question, and Nellie Eel bowed her head quietly because she thinks what Senju Kusanai said is very reasonable. Although she didn't think about this kind of thing before, after Senju Kusanai appeared, she found that there was always a kind of throbbing in her heart. How did she know that Senju Kusanai is not only handsome, but in addition to his heaven-defying appearance, he also has the unendowed blood of Yuzao? You must know that this kind of talent is very attractive to the opposite sex. Seeing the two flirting, Inuaraheim felt a little uncomfortable. Is there something wrong with the two of you? This kind of thing can't be discussed in front of so many people, can it? Senju Kusanai heard the words, and looked at Inuaraheim's expression. That slightly pink face became even more attractive. Seeing Inuaraheim like this, Senju Kusanai couldn't help teasing. Miss Oraheim, are you jealous? Seeing Senju Kusanai's teasing expression, Inuaraheim instantly recognized his position. You must know that she begged Senju Kusanai to save her partner at the beginning, and everything after that was just a deal. What right does she have to be jealous? Realizing that Senju Kusanai had seen through her little thoughts, Inuaraheim's little face became even more flushed at the moment. However, facing Senju Kusanai's questioning, she shook her head in denial. Who said I was jealous? I don't have one. Inuaraheim's expression was pretending to be calm, but there was no way to hide those blushing little cheeks. That shy and almost crazy posture made people want to pounce on him and bully him severely. However, the 3.4 urgent task now is to return to the Soul Society, and recover the losses as much as possible before Inobukagira's Uo's plot succeeds. Thinking of this, Senju Kusanai stopped joking, looked at Nellie Eel, and caressed that delicate and pretty face with warm hands deep inside. Miss Nilu, you and Oraheim are waiting for me in this world. You have just repaired the damage on the mask, and you have just recovered to Vasto Lord not long ago, so it is not suitable for the second return to the blade breakthrough yet. In order to prevent those enemies with ulterior motives, you can just protect Inu Oraheim. Leave the matter of the Soul Society to me. Chapter 327, Re-entering the Boundary. Nellie originally wanted to go to the Soul Society together, but seeing the appreciative expression on Senju Star Yoruichi's face, she could only follow Senju Star Yoruichi's opinion. Be careful on the road, we will wait for you to come back. While talking, Nellie took Inuaraheim's hand and said confidently, you don't have to worry about Karakura Town, I will protect Sister Oraheim. During the conversation, Nellie actually regarded Inuaraheim as her little sister. Senju Kusanai looked at the harmony between the two with a look of relief. As expected of the young lady I like, she is really sensible. Here Senju Kusanai is still praising the two girls. The other half of Sui Feng already feels very speechless. No matter how it sounds like a trick used by a bad uncle to deceive a little girl. However, for some reason, Sui Feng also felt a little jealous in his heart. After realizing this, Sui Feng quickly shook his head violently, trying to get this thought in his heart. After explaining the matter here, Senju Starry Night should also be triggered. If that's the case, then we can go. While speaking, Senju Kusanai used Ligua Rinnegan to open a black cavity. Seeing Senju Starry Night's skills, Sui Feng was completely amazed. You must know that the Shinigami of the Soul Society needs to open the crossing gate when crossing the two realms. The person in charge of this technology is generally from the Technology Development Bureau of the 12th team. Unexpectedly, Senju Kusanai was able to break through the space and enter the black cavity with his own strength. This strength is too terrifying. After hesitating for a moment, Sui Feng followed Senju Kusanai and his group into the black cavity. After entering the black cavity, Senju Yoruichi felt the abnormal fluctuation inside. You must know that when I entered the black cavity and came to Soul Society for the first time, I just met Jutu. Under the influence of Kutu, Senju Kusanai entered the timeline of chaos. At this moment, Senju Kusanai obviously felt a strange atmosphere in the space here. This must have been done by Nyoshi, and later Inubuke Jirosa took advantage of the environment here. And the most important point is that Jutu's energy fluctuations cannot be detected here. From the looks of it, could it be that Jutu has already been eliminated? Thinking of this, Kienzi Kusanai felt somewhat regretful. If Jutu is destroyed, then there is no way to correct the timeline again from the broken boundary in the black cavity. It's a pity to think about it, but the matter has come to this point. There is no way for neutral Starry Night. We can only take one step at a time. A group of people crossed the boundary and broke through the portal of the Soul Society. After landing, Hand Kusanai suddenly discovered that the Soul Society here was already covered with gunfire. At a glance, many battles took place in Jingling Court almost at the same time. Needless to say, Captain Link must have launched a general attack on Jinglingting. At this moment, Kienki and Kusanai felt an incomparably hot power zone. It turned out to be Ryujin Jaka. I don't know when it started, but the power of Ryujin Jaka has begun to spread throughout the entire Jingling Court. Feeling the extremely dry air around, as if it had been evaporated for a long time, Senju Kusanai pondered for a moment, and guessed the current situation all at once. Apparently, Yamamoto Genryuzai was under the combined attack of Jushiro and Kiraku Shunsui. If only the joint attack of these two captains was not enough to stop the Captain Yamamoto, but Unohana Retsu who followed behind also played a very important role. Looking at Sui Feng and Ozomi Kujo in front of him, Senju Kusanai decisively cast a mark in Rinnegan. Sui Feng, take Kujo and Ozomi and go to Inubuke Jirozuo first. After I resolve the battle here, I will support you as soon as possible. Senju Starry Night has the effect of Senju power, which can exchange any person or object, even ninjutsu and other targets within a certain range. To put it simply, as long as 957 is marked, everything within the scope of the ability can be swapped. After setting the mark on Kujo and Nozomi, you only need to solve the troubles here, and you can immediately perform the displacement effect of launching a competitive force. In this way, Senju Starry Night can swap positions with Maka. In this case, he will be able to appear beside Kujo and Ozomi at the first time. Although they didn't get along for a long time, the Senju Starry Night in front of them often brought them surprises. Although they don't understand Senju Kusanai's ability, as long as it is Senju Kusanai's order, they will gladly obey it. Once there is any emergency, I will use the communication flares of the 2nd Division to report the news. At that time, you only need to follow the defense line of the flares to track us. After Sui Feng urged for a while, he pulled Rijitiao Wangshi and left without looking back. And Senju Kusanai at the scene looked at the team building of the first team. In a few moments, Senju Kusanai's location appeared in the compound of the first team. Chapter 328, Caihuo Taidao, Rising Sunblade. After coming to the first team compound, Senju Kusanai saw Yamamoto Genryuzai and his two apprentices fighting inside for the first time. Jushiro Shizulang and Kiraku Shunsui both looked dignified and focused, and Unohana Retsu who followed behind did not dare to neglect. Yamamoto Genryuzai frowned slightly at this moment. Are you trying to entangle the old man with such a wheel fight? You know I haven't tried my best. Are you trying to force me to Bankai? Jushiro Shizulang and Kiraku Shunsui both pretended to be terrified when they heard the words, and joked, Mr. Yamamoto, your Bankai is certainly powerful, but carrying out Bankai under such circumstances may be unbearable to the Soul Society. The reason why we brought Captain Unohana who is in charge of medical treatment is that we can limit your movements, teacher, on the premise of protecting Jinglingting. At this time, Unohana Retsu also stood up, looking in the direction of Yamamoto Genryuzai with low eyes, and said sullenly, Captain Yamamoto, your Bankai is indeed very destructive. But my solutions are not vegetarian. Don't you still want to compete with me like you did thousands of years ago? The appearance of Unohana Retsu stopped Yamamoto Genryuzai from wanting Bankai. You must know that Unohana Retsu was a famous villain in the 13th team of first generation thousands of years ago. At the same time, she is also the first generation Kenpaki who symbolizes power and killing. If they really want to use Bankai to fight, I am afraid that the entire Jingling court will be destroyed in one fell swoop. For the protection of Jinglingting, Yamamoto Genryusai has no way to solve it. However, if you continue to use Shikai's Ryujin Chakra, it may be difficult to break through the siege of the three captains in front of you for a while. At this moment, Yamamoto Genryusai is caught in a dilemma. However, at this moment, the voice of Senju Kusanai came from not far away. If everyone is just afraid of destroying the Jingling Court, then I can help. While speaking, Senju Kusanai directly used the space teleportation of the purple Rinnegan. The surrounding space underwent earth-shaking changes, and the people who were still in the Jingling Court a second ago had come to a strange world. Looking at the miraculous scene in front of them, Jushiro Shizulang and Kiraku Shunsui were almost stunned. Unohana Retsu, who seems to be calm, is also sweating on his forehead because Yamamoto Motoinagi Shichiguni had experienced the space teleportation of Senju Starry Night before, so he didn't feel such a surprise this time. On the contrary, after coming to this brand new world, Yamamoto Genryusai's expression relaxed because he knew that his Bankai would no longer have any influence on Jinglingting. With this in mind, Yamamoto Genryusai is not only cold, HMPH, what a sarcasm, it has turned into my student's appearance, and I will be condemned by my conscience when I do it. However, a counterfeit is a counterfeit. Since you want to compete with the old man, then the old man will no longer show mercy. As soon as the words fell, Yamamoto Genryusai's breath suddenly sank. Almost at the same time, Ryujin Chakra's blazing flames were instantly absorbed into that simple sword. Bankai, remnant fire sword. With Bankai's words of liberation, the dagger in Yamamoto Genryusai's hand turned into a black shattered blade. The raging flames emitted by Ryujin Chakra also returned to the sword at this moment, and everything seemed to be calm. However, the temperature comparable to the core of the sun is hidden in the originally blazing sword. Maybe it's been too long since Bankai, you may have forgotten the old man's ability. Let the old man show you again. Bankai, remnant fire Taito middle east, rising sun blade. Although it looks ordinary, it doesn't burn or emit explosive flames, but it can wipe out everything it touches without a trace. The flames that are comparable to the core of the sun seem to be able to burn everything in the world into ashes. Seeing such a scene, Jushiro Shizulang and Kiraku Shunsui were also very distressed. It's really sad. In the end, I couldn't stop the teacher's Bankai. It seems that we can only fight to the death. While talking, Kiraku Shunsui has already shaken the patterned underfeather to the ground. Obviously, Bankai's plan is well planned. Zhao Wang's, however, such Bankai's ability is an existence that even he himself cannot master. It seems that I will trouble you to retreat first. After Kiraku Shunsui reminded the two to back off, Ryatsu immediately began to gather on the double swords. However, at this moment, Tenzixingai's figure stopped in front of everyone. Licking his lips, Senju Kusanai kept shaking his head. Sure enough, it is extremely dry, and it feels like my lips are about to crack. Old man Yamamoto, I think you are still the king who lifted Bankai. Although they are spirit skeletons, they have perfectly copied all the abilities and memories of the main body. In the middle of speaking, Senju Kusanai glanced around. Chapter 329. The Name of 1,000 Years Ago. Finding that everyone was listening, Senju Kusanai continued again. In addition to being able to copy memories and abilities, the most important belief is to inherit the idea of the ontology. With a reminder from Senju Starry Night, Yamamoto Genryusai was still a little confused. It seems that they don't understand the meaning of Senju Starry Night at all. Seeing this honest little old man, Senju Kusanai had no choice but to continue to explain. As Gautai 13th Division, what is their job? With the guidance of Senju Starry Night, Yamamoto Motoinagi Shichiguni realized his enlightenment. Guarding Jingling Court. Seeing Yamamoto Genryusai's enlightenment, Senju Kusanai hurriedly picked up. That's right. The main body's belief is to guard the Jingling Court. As perfect replicas, these spirit skeleton captains naturally inherited the main body's belief in guarding the Jingling Court. When I was in the first team compound, Captain Yamamoto should know about 057, right? The opponents are obviously 3 captain-level existences. As long as they each perform Bankai, they may not be incapable of fighting. However, the reason why they formulated the tactics of the wheel battle is that they want to avoid the destruction of the Jingling Court. Hearing Senju Kusanai's words, Yamamoto Genryusai was also lost in thought at this moment. That's right, they, the spirit skeleton captains, could directly Bankai just now, so even if they also Bankai themselves, there is no way for Remnant Fire Taki to eliminate all of them in the first place. If the time dragged on a little longer, the water in the entire Jingling Court would be completely evaporated by the remaining fire sword. Not only that, Unohana Retsu's blood is also an extremely terrifying existence. Once the killing heart from thousands of years ago is awakened, Unohana Retsu will also be transformed into the prison blood-killing god, and the entire Jinglingting will also face the fate of blood staining the city. However, they did not conduct Bankai immediately. HMPH, even if they still have a sense of reverence for Jinglingting, it doesn't seem to explain anything. Does it? If you accept it, what should my real subordinates do? Yamamoto Genryusai's tone was very firm, as if not allowing others to question it. Kyoraku Shunsui and Jushiro Shiznang smiled at each other and said with emotion, "The old man's temper is still as stubborn as ever." Unohana Retsu also had low eyebrows, and sighed, "Is there still a need for Bankai? I haven't remembered the feeling of killing for a long time." While talking, the group is also ready to fight. However, when he was about to strike, Senju Kusanai stood up in time to stop it. "Everyone, don't mess around and listen to what I have to say." While speaking, Senju Kusanai stood in the middle of the two groups of people, looked at Yamamoto Genryu's with a smile in his eyes, and asked, "Captain Yamamoto, do you remember that you once had a subordinate named Azan?" Senju Starry Knight's words immediately stimulated Yamamoto Genryu's. "That's right. Azan's plan is to build the King Key and rush to the palace of the King of Spirits. Their purpose behind it is to endanger the existence of the three realms." Thinking of this, Yamamoto Genryu's suddenly realized, the meaning of what Senju Sanxi said is that he is afraid that Azan will take advantage of it. Indeed, if we fight with Captain Spirit skeletons and lose both sides, there will indeed be a risk of this night. But that doesn't mean watching them defect and condoning their arrogance. While speaking, Yamamoto Genryu's tone was very firm, still unquestionable. Kyoraku Shunsui and Jushiro Shiznang also looked helpless. "Senju 3 seats. You should give up." If the old man can be persuaded through explanations, we don't have to spend so much time studying tactics. Having said that, Yamamoto Genryu's temper is too stubborn. The atmosphere entered a stalemate again for a while, and at this moment, Senju Kusanai sighed and said, "Captain Yamamoto, although you may not be afraid of the threat of Azan, don't forget that someone who was defeated in a bloody battle thousands of years ago is still watching you secretly. Have you all forgotten?" Senju Kusanai's words hadn't finished yet, but the expressions of all the people present were cheered up, and then became extremely dignified. Seeing everyone's reaction, Senju Kusanai nodded. "It seems that you all remember the name, Yuhabush." "That's right, Yuhabush is about to make a comeback. As you who existed thousands of years ago, you must know something about it, especially Captain Unohana. Even if Captain Unohana was known as the villain of the Soul Society thousands of years ago, even if he had the title of first-generation Kenpaki, you should also feel weak when facing Yuhabush, right? Also, Captain Yamamoto 1,000 years ago was in his heyday when he was young and strong. But even so he still needed a sneak attack to win. Even so, it's just a surprise attack, but it can't be killed in seconds. So, now that Yuhabush is making a comeback, do you think the threat can't be resolved so easily?" Chapter 330, Another Conspiracy. Facing Senju Starry Knight's soul questioning, Yamamoto Genryu's and the skeleton captains were all silent. Because Senju Starry Knight asked these questions just now, they really didn't know how to answer them. Thousands of years ago, Yuhabush had already swept away the existence of the Soul Society's Jingling court. However, after 1,000 years, no one knows how far it has grown. Seeing that everyone was silent, Senju Kusanai smiled lightly and continued to make up the knife. "Don't blame me for not reminding you that today's Yuhabush is not as good as it was 1,000 years ago. Previously, not only is Yuhabush's own power unfathomable, but his subordinate Star-Crossed Knights are also very troublesome. Not only that, almost everyone in the Star-Crossed Knights has captain-level strength. As for Yuhabush's own personal guard, its strength is even more difficult to match at the captain level." Senju Kusanai's words came out, and everyone present was surprised. How can this be? It's just the personal guards. Is it an existence that even the captain level can't deal with? How powerful should Yuhabush himself be? Everyone simply didn't dare to continue to make up their minds, especially Yamamoto Genryu's. His eyes are even more dignified at this moment. If it's just Azan, then he really doesn't pay attention. But the most difficult opponent for blindness is Yuhabush from thousands of years ago. The existence that he could only win by sneak attack. Now, the millennium has caused Yamamoto Genryu's state to decline rapidly, while Yuhabush is not affected by the years. From this point of view, the problem is already very serious. But not only that, it is said that there is also a so-called Star Knights, whose strength is all comparable to the level of the captain. Looks like this. Isn't Soul Society very dangerous? After hearing the reminder from Senju Kusanai, the captains of the skeletons also realized the seriousness of the problem. However, the members of Captain Link still didn't flinch, and said helplessly, "The matter Senju said is indeed a serious problem. But even so, there is nothing we can do." Seeing everyone's helpless expressions, Senju Kusanai smiled lightly and asked, "Are you worried that you will be watched by Inabakaja Rosa? After all, as a scientist, you are his creation. It must be very easy to make some tricks on you. But you don't have to worry at all. No matter what method Inabakaja Rezuo will use behind his back, that kind of real-time monitoring must send signals to transmit the real-time battle situation on the battlefield. If this signal is cut off, then he will naturally have no way to monitor it." Seeing that everyone was still in a daze and couldn't figure it out, Senju Kusanai pointed to the space above his head. He smiled and said, "Do you still remember where this is?" With a reminder from Senju Starry Knight, the captains of the spirit skeleton suddenly realized. Yes, this is a different space, belonging to two different spaces of different time and space. Even if there is any monitoring equipment installed on the body, The signal cannot be transmitted across the space. That way you don't have to worry about being watched. After figuring it out, the spirit skeleton captains also looked at each other, and then relaxed. Old man Yamamoto, although we are nothing more than fakes, we are still your students after all. Asking for flowers. This time we were actually forced to be helpless. Just because Inobukagira's controller is on his body, if he violates his will, he will be destroyed on the spot at any time. Kyoraku Shunsui stood up and explained this behavior. However, in the middle of the talk, Kyoraku Shunsui looked at Senju Starry Night and squinted and smiled. Senju Kusanai is really perceptive, seeing through our current situation at once. Indeed, we didn't betray Jingling. The reason why we didn't fight Bankai was to protect Jingling. 0. All of this is forced and helpless, and the culprit is nothing but Inobukagira. We are actually looking for ways to counter it. Hearing Kyoraku Shunsui's explanation, Yamamoto Genryusai also nodded, and bonded, with Senju 3 seats to assure you, I believe what you said is true. However, how should this situation be broken at this moment? After expressing his belief, Yamamoto Genryusai also sent out a sole question. Yes, since the problem is already clear, how to solve the problem. That's what matters right now. After having this thought, everyone turned their attention to Senju Kusanai. Seeing everyone's eager expressions, Senju Kusanai just smiled indifferently. Since everything is a conspiracy by Inobukagira's, then kill him directly. Isn't that the solution? When Senju Kusanai spoke, he had a calm expression. But looking at this starry night, everyone gasped. How can this be so easy? Chapter 331, Bankai of Unohana. Looking at the meaning of Senju Starry Night, it seems to say a very trivial thing. The captains of the skeletons know the strength of Inobukagira's best, and they can control so many captain-level existences with one person. How could it be so easy to solve it? 3 seats Senju. Although I have to admit that your strength is also very strong, but there is one thing I must remind you. Inobukagira's strength is definitely beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Before the words fell, Senju Kusanai shook his head with a look of disdain. A mere Inobukagira's is nothing at all. I can destroy it with a single blow. While speaking, Senju Starry Night's aura suddenly released 150. Obviously, he is not joking, and everyone knows that he is very powerful. But Inobukagira's strength is unpredictable. At this time, the captain of the skeleton stood up and said, I don't think so. The safety of the Soul Society is the top priority at the moment. We captain skeletons should have existed in this world. Take the 3 seats of Senju as the bait, and we, the spirit skeleton captains, sneak attack at the critical moment. I believe that even Inobukagira's can hardly escape our sneak attack. Kyoraku Shunsui is indeed an old cunt, and all he can think of in his mind are some sneak attack methods. However, it has to be said that with his strength, it is still very easy to sneak attack secretly. He only needs to attract attention on the frontal battlefield, and Kyoraku Shunsui can always succeed in surprise attacks at unexpected times. However, Senju Kusanai didn't bother to do this at all. With his strength, even if he launches a frontal attack, he can achieve a one-hit instant kill effect. But this method will kill Juo Wangshi together. The chances of life of these two people are combined, and the death of any one of them will lead to the death of the other. This is doomed not to use conventional means to deal with this person. Facing the sincere Kyoraku Shunsui, Senju Kusanai said that there is no need to trouble. I naturally have my means to solve this matter, so you don't have to worry about it. While speaking, Senju Kusanai was about to cancel the effect of space teleportation, and was about to send the group back to Seoul. But at this moment Unohana Retsu stood up. I'm sorry, Inobukagira's ability is really special. We can't take the risk of letting you face it by yourself. Since you already know our secret, we must not allow you to destroy our plan. When Unohana Retsu spoke, the killing intent that could not be concealed began to bloom in her body. As expected, the biggest villain of the Soul Society thousands of years ago, Unohana Retsu, who looked gentle and refined, could release such vicious killing intent. Almost at the same time, Jushiro Juzunru and Kyoraku Shunsui also stood in front of Yamamoto Motoinagi Shijikuni. This intention is also very obvious. Obviously, this is to let the two of them stop Yamamoto Genryusai. But then let first-generation Kenpaki Unohana do the killing. Unexpectedly, the tactics of this group of spirit skeleton captains are really cautious. Looking at the posture of the crowd, it seems that I can't convince them if I don't show my real strength. If that's the case, then I'm not going to be polite. Captain Unohana, let me see the strength of first-generation Kenpaki. While talking, Senju Starry Night has switched to the state of blue-purple Lukua Rinnegan. When facing Unohana Retsu, Senju Starry Night is really looking forward to it. You must know that the original Unohana Retsu was killed by the plot before he showed his strength, and Bankai's ability seems to be very ordinary. Thinking of this, Senju Kusanai smiled slightly. Captain Unohana, I suggest you show your strength directly and use Bankai to fight. Because in a real battle, You will not be given time to improve your strength step by step. After hearing Senju Starry Knight's reminder, Unohana Retsu also agreed. Although her first-generation Kenpaki's attribute also belongs to the type of fighting more and more bravely, but in real fighting, there will be no such opportunity to improve her strength. With this in mind, Unohana no longer held back, and directly pulled out Zanpei Kuto. Bankai. It's all over. Accompanied by a very simple liberating language, the seemingly ordinary Zanpei Kuto released an incomparable force. Under the Ryatsu full of killing intent, blood burst out instantly. As if it was blood from hell, everything between heaven and earth was dyed red in an instant. A bloody air 3.0 diffused in the air, and the whole atmosphere was extremely depressing, as if being in the underworld. At this moment, when I look at Unohana Retsu again, it looks like an executioner transformed from bones. Although it was just a momentary illusion, Unohana Retsu in front of him seemed to have really turned into an emotionless hell killer. Seeing Unohana Retsu like this, Kianzi Kusinai couldn't help admiring, as expected of the first-generation Kenpaki thousands of years ago. This monstrous killing intent seems to be able to disturb the gods and Buddhas. Bankai's momentum is not lost to the captain of Yamamoto. Chapter 332, Kurotsuchi Mayuri's Resentment. At this moment, Anoka was looking straight at Senju Kusinai, and there seemed to be a hint of pity on that cold face. However, the opening is still a sigh without any emotion. Senju 3 seats. Originally we didn't have to fight each other, but I can't let you go to Inubukageruzo rashly. This matter is related to the life and death of the Soul Society, so we naturally dare not take it lightly. So, either die by my sword, or, just show extraordinary strength. Before the words fell, Unohana Retsu slashed casually, and Zanpei Kuto, who was soaked in blood behind Bankai, erupted a blood-red sword aura instantly. The sword energy of blood with infinite killing intent galloped towards the position of Senju Kusinai, and the roaring winds around it were like the wailing of purgatory ghosts. It seemed as if he was about to reach out his hand in the next moment and pull Senju Kusinai straight into hell. The oppressive feeling of such a blow is indeed very tyrannical. However, Senju Kusinai naturally wouldn't care about such an attack. Any attack in front of Lugua Rinnegan is like an ant, and it can be broken with just a wave of the hand. Under everyone's staring eyes, Hand Kusinai chose to defend against the thundering Yin Wolf's blow head-on. Choke. An extremely ear-piercing sound sounded instantly. The blood-colored sword energy seemed to be chopped on a piece of solid iron by an anvil, and the sound emitted was breathtaking. In the next second, the bloody sword cheese blood dance also exploded, and the attack with thunderous power seemed to be scratching the surface, without causing any splashes. Seeing Senju Starry Knight's actions, Unohana Retsu frowned slightly. Sure enough, your strength is indeed very strong. If it is this kind of strength, maybe there is really hope. At this moment, Unohana Retsu no longer has the hostility of the past. Now, in order to protect the safety of Jingling, Unohana Retsu chooses to temporarily believe in Senju Kusinai's strength. With this in mind, Ryatsu retreated. The field of blood erupting around has also become extremely clear at this moment. The battle here has been settled, and Kiraku Shunsui and Jushiro Shiznai naturally don't have to pester Yamamoto Genryusai anymore. Mr. Yamamoto, I offended you a lot just now. We also have our own way of action. I hope the teacher will not blame you. After the incident just now, Yamamoto Genryusai, who still had some doubts about Captain Skeleton, now completely believed in the belief of this group of people. And after everything was settled, Senju Kusinai was finally able to unlock the space teleportation this time. A group of people reappeared in Jingling Court's team-building compound. The turmoil here has calmed down, but the battles in several places around are still going on. It seems that other people don't know what's going on here. We'd better stop everyone from fighting before other accidents happen. Anoka murmured worriedly, but Senju Kusinai didn't take it seriously, and said indifferently, actually, there is no such trouble at all. I have a faster solution. While speaking, Senju Kusinai determined the position of the other party according to the perception of the mark, and then used the ability of Tanzu to directly teleport to Inubukageruzo's position. At this moment, Inubukageruzo was in the Technical Development Bureau of the 12th Division, and Suifeng took Kujo Nozomi back according to the previously discussed strategy. Looking at Kujo Wangmai in front of him, in Fu Langzhuo's eyes revealed a cover-up fanaticism. Captain Suifeng, you did a great job this time. Ha 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 ha, finally, I can finally do it. Inubukageruzo looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. His expression was full of madness. Although they were also evolved from Neoxu, Inubukage Langzhuo actually inherited all the beliefs of Neoxu. Looking at Kujo Nozomi in front of him, Inubukage said earnestly, we obviously belong to the reformed soul of Yani Agzu, and we are also oppressed poor people. Now we are one, and the humiliation of the past can finally be washed away. Excited, 930 Inubukageruzo began to prepare for the fit. Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri, prepare a laboratory for me, and my wish will finally come true. But at this moment, under the order of Inubukageruzo, Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri really made a move. Kurotsuchi Mayuri, whose eyes glowed with blue light, replied heartily with a strange smile, Inobakajiro-sama, it is my honor to serve you. Gigi. However, in the next second, when Kurotsuchi Mayuri's figure passed by Inobakajiro's Uo, he suddenly made his own movements. Kurotsuchi Mayuri quickly pulled out a Zanpei Kuto, and the Jizo in Shikai form pierced directly into Inobakajiro's Uo's body. Gigi. Inoba 7 seats. I didn't expect to be able to make so many little tricks under my nose. I have to say, your behavior makes me very embarrassed. This sudden situation left Inobakajiro's speechless in surprise. Chapter 333, Demon Dance. Looking at the vicious Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri in front of him, as Inobakajiro's Uo who also belongs to the Technology Development Bureau of the 12th Division, he felt a little fear at this moment. Originally, he only knew that Kurotsuchi Mayuri had a perverse personality, but he had extraordinary means. That's why he deliberately ambushed in the broken boundary at the first time. I thought that if I trapped it in the broken world and replaced this big trouble with the spiritual skeleton Kurotsuchi Mayuri, there wouldn't be so many troubles. Unexpectedly, he still underestimated the strength of Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri. You have obviously deprived you of the ability to move, but you still look at me with this kind of eyes? It's just an ant. Don't kneel down for me. Kurotsuchi Mayuri's anger at the moment also reached ultimate. This time from his Technical Development Bureau, the most face-conscious captain, Kurotsuchi Mayuri, felt his face was gone. Thinking of this, Kurotsuchi Mayuri kicked Inobakajiro's crazily, wishing to kick him to death with his feet. Damn bug, I'm going to make you pay for this. How dare you embarrass me? While cursing, Infulangjuo was beaten to pieces. But at this moment, the spirit skeleton captains around Inobakajiro's have actually been replaced by the real captain brought by Kurotsuchi Mayuri. During his time trapped in the breach, Kurotsuchi Mayuri found other true captains through his own experimental data. Since Suifeng brought Kujo no Zomi, Kurotsuchi Mayuri made a special trip to disguise those captains as spirit captains. I didn't expect the Soul Society to have such a scum like you. You dare to attack us captains. I think you are really tired of life. Fortunately, Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri is superior, otherwise you would have succeeded. This time the plan was brought to light. You can repent in hell. When a group of people were about to give Inobakajiro's a fatal blow, at this time Senju Xinya suddenly stood up and stopped him. You can't kill him. Although everyone has basically seen Senju Starry Night, they also know the special Shinigami hand picked by the head of Qianxing Eye. However, almost none of the people present had seen its true strength. Looking at the Senju Starry Night in front of him, Kurotsuchi Mayuri also looked curious. As an experimental maniac at the start of the technique, Kurotsuchi Mayuri still has some understanding of the battle data of Senju Starry Night. I know in my heart that this person's strength is far from being as simple as it appears. Thinking of this, Kurotsuchi Mayuri laughed. I know why you stopped us. You should be out of consideration for this little girl. You can't bear them to die together, right? As the reformed souls that coexist in one body, the souls of the two of them also came from the reformed souls of the Freebird Exu. It can be said that both will prosper and all will suffer. If one of them is killed, the other will not live. It seems that our 3 seats of Senju are very compassionate. As soon as Kurotsuchi Mayuri's words came out of his mouth, others around him realized what had happened. So there is such a connection among them? That is to say, if you kill one of them, the other will die too? But Captain Lee never mentioned it before. When other people started to discuss, Kurotsuchi Mayuri showed great disdain and snorted coldly. Why are these insignificant things being said in such detail? Our mission is to protect the Jingling court. I don't care about anything that has nothing to do with it. Looking at Kurotsuchi Mayuri in front of her, Qianxin smiled lightly. This style of going one's own way is really as paranoid as ever. But Senju Xinya said that it doesn't matter at all. You must know that this Kurotsuchi Mayuri is a very creative scientist. If it can be guided correctly, it is estimated that many interesting things can be invented. But the key now is not this. The first thing to solve is the problem of Kujo no Momi and Inobakajiro's Uo in front of him. Senju Starry Night stood up and asked Kurotsuchi Mayuri, Captain Lee, if I remember correctly, the Soul Transformation Project also belongs to your Technology Development Bureau, and as the current director, you should be very familiar with it, right? Hearing Senju Starry Night's question, Kurotsuchi Mayuri was obviously a little upset and snorted coldly. Cut, that's natural. I know all kinds of projects in the history of the Technology Development Bureau, let alone this abandoned Soul Transformation Project. Yan, Li Hao's words are full of arrogance, but it expresses his disdain for the Soul Transformation Project. In fact, this is also understandable. Transforming the soul is not creating the soul after all. The former is just a transformation based on the existing soul. It is not so much a scientific research project as it is a biochemical transformation project. Using real souls to carry out inhuman transformation experiments is nothing more than pouring unique Ryatsu into the souls. Compared with the soul creation from scratch, the difficulty is simply different. Thinking of this, Kurotsuchi Mayuri looked at Nirvana. Even for a scientist comparable to Kurotsuchi Mayuri, it may not be easy for him to create a perfect ghost like a Nirvana dream. Chapter 334, The the solution to the problem. Hearing that Senju Kusanai mentioned the research on transforming souls, Kurotsuchi Mayuri's eyes suddenly lit up, and he asked with a slightly surprised expression, "This kind of thing is a secret of my Technology Development Bureau, where did you know?" Seeing Kurotsuchi Mayuri's exaggerated expression, Senju Kusanai smiled slightly and said calmly, "Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri, please calm down. This kind of thing is not a secret at all. The Shinigami who have experienced that era actually know some rumors and it is not difficult to find out. What's more, the current Inobuke Ijirazuo has made such a big commotion. I don't think it's easy to know." Senju Starry Knight's explanation is very reasonable, but Kurotsuchi Mayuri is still a little bit aggrieved. "TCH, all the experiments of my Tangdom Technology Development Bureau are confidential, and I don't know how that rich woman keeps it secret." Hearing Kurotsuchi Mayuri's complaints, two women appeared in Senju Kusanai's mind, Shutara Senju Maru and Hikifune Kuru. It is hard to imagine that Kuru Hikifune, who usually looks like a gentle aunt, turned out to be the director of the technical opening. Even Urahara Kisuke's predecessor laid the foundation for the development of Yahanwen. The experiment of transforming the soul is also developed based on the improvement and transformation of this technology. However, looking at Kurotsuchi Mayuri's disrespectful attitude, it is clear that the woman mentioned is Shudara Senju. Shudara Senju Maru and Kurotsuchi Mayuri have always been at odds. Shudara Senju Maru, who once worked in the Technology Development Bureau of the 12th Division, was also responsible for researching some very important technologies. But Kurotsuchi Mayuri is very dissatisfied with this. He was obviously just an ordinary team member, but he dared to look down on him as a genius, and even made provocative words many times. This is why Kurotsuchi Mayuri cannot tolerate it. However, it turns out that Shutara Senjumaru's talent is really not comparable to that of ordinary people. With the invention of the deadly domineering outfit, he leapt forward and directly became a member of the Zero Fan, SIPF, team of Lingwen Palace. You must know that this is the Spirit King's Guard that exists independently of the Goutai 13th Division, and its presence in the entire Huhan realm is also special. The reason why Kurotsuchi Mayuri disliked Shudara Senju Maru was partly due to jealousy. Seeing that Kurotsuchi Mayuri was struggling, Senju Kusanai sent an assist in a timely manner. Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri is not only a scientific genius, but also meticulous in management. Scientific researchers should have such rigor. If the previous administrators had your meticulous spirit, there wouldn't be so many unexpected incidents in this kind of experiment. Hearing the compliment from Senju Starry Night, Kurotsuchi Mayuri felt very appreciated. With the compliment of Senju Starry Night, Kurotsuchi Mayuri went straight down the slope, boasting not at all modestly, "That's natural." Under the leadership of my lord, the Technology Development Bureau has shown a high-spirited scene in both technology and management. This is definitely not something that stupid woman can do. And damn Urahara Kisuke, they're all jealous of my talent. One day I will prove my strength to them. RGGG. While Kurotsuchi Mayuri was adoring himself, Senju Kusanai seized the opportunity and asked, "Since Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri is so powerful, there should be a way to reintegrate this reformed soul, right?" Senju Starry Knight's question made Kurotsuchi Mayuri slightly stunned. "The fusion is very simple. The souls of the two of them are from the reformed soul Uuksu. You only need to restore the original souls to perfectly merge into the original state." Kurotsuchi Mayuri is still very familiar with the experiment of that year, so when Senju Kusanai just asked this question, he had the answer. However, Kurotsuchi Mayuri's answer was not what Senju Starry Night wanted. "Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri, you are split into two reformed souls, one is Kujo Nozomi, and the other is Inobuke Ijirazuo. If the reformed soul is directly restored to its original state, wouldn't it destroy the two souls? A soul? Is there a way to transform the fusion of the soul while retaining the existing soul?" After hearing Senju Starry Night's question, Kurotsuchi Mayuri was stunned for a while, but after a while, he smiled slightly and said meaningfully, "I know what you mean. You want to keep the soul and consciousness of this little girl, and you want to fuse the souls of the two of them, but you don't want the Bbook from back then to reappear in the world. Is that what you mean?" Kurotsuchi Mayuri deserves to be Kurotsuchi Mayuri, who figured out the meaning of Thousand Stars Night at the first time. However, Kurotsuchi Mayuri said with a dark smile, "It's not that there are no solutions, but it's very difficult to implement them." Halfway through the speech, Kurotsuchi Mayuri looked at the positions of Kujo Nozomi and Inobuke Ijirazuo, and said calmly, "The so-called fusion is nothing more than the fusion of two powers that transform souls. There are also multiple permutations and combinations." Kurotsuchi Mayuri said this with a slight smile on his face. Chapter 335, Changing the Subconscious. If you want to fuse, you don't necessarily need the equal fusion of two souls. If you let one soul swallow the other soul, you can also achieve the effect of fusion. In this way, the strength can be simply improved without changing the state of the soul. After hearing Kurotsuchi Mayuri's explanation, Senju Starry Night also expressed his satisfaction. Sure enough, there is still a way, as expected of Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri. He came up with such a good idea at the first time. I don't know if there will be any difficulties in the process of integration. Hearing Senju Starry Knight's concerns, Kurotsuchi Mayuri's smile became even brighter. As expected of the third seat of Senju, you really have a lot of ideas. Yes, there are indeed many safety hazards in wanting one soul to devour another soul, because it is forcibly devoured and dissolved. The devoured soul is doomed not to keep its own place, and there will definitely be fierce resistance. If the devoured soul resists too fiercely and suppresses the original soul in terms of strength, it will be easily backlashed. In this way, at least the fusion will fail, and at worst it will be swallowed by the opponent in reverse. So, the risk is still huge. Then the question is, now that Senju 3 seats know the disadvantages of devouring fusion, do you dare to continue the experiment? Of course, Kurotsuchi Mayuri himself likes to do experiments, and this time he has ready-made experimental materials, so he is of course happy to conduct experiments. However, besides that, Kurotsuchi Mayuri also wanted to see how Senju Kusanai would make a choice after knowing the risks. After a moment of consideration, Senju Kusanai raised his head and asked Kurotsuchi Mayuri, "You mean to say that the process of swallowing and merging two souls will inevitably have the appearance of resistance and anti-swallowing? Then if one of the souls is subconsciously willing to be swallowed by the other, wouldn't the risks in the whole process be self-defeating?" Hearing Senju Starry Knight's question, Kurotsuchi Mayuri expressed a look of bewilderment, and even felt a little surprised. Isn't this obvious? If one of the souls is swallowed voluntarily, there will naturally be no rejection. However, the crux of the problem is, do such souls really exist in the world? Is anyone really willing to be devoured by others? Even if someone really says that, the actual operation will take a little time. During this process, can you guarantee that he won't go back on his word? Even if you use force to coerce or threaten in other ways, even if the other party promises you not to resist in advance, the instinct in the soul cannot be controlled. When the soul is devoured and bitten, the soul may take emergency measures to avoid suffering, right? Once you can't bear the pain, there will still be subconscious resistance in the middle. Has the Senju 3 considered this situation? Kurotsuchi Mayuri's rhetorical question is also in place. Indeed, according to human nature, there is basically no such soul willing to be devoured by others in the world. However, Senju Kusanai smiled. Subconscious resistance? It's an interesting statement. But what if I say, I can change a person's subconscious mind? While speaking, Senju stared at Inubakajira with his gaze. However, Kurotsuchi Mayuri did not understand the meaning of Senju Starry Night. The expression is still blank. Senju-sanksi, I seem to understand what you mean, but I don't seem to understand. Ask for flowers. A person's subconscious comes from instinct. Can instinct be changed? Kurotsuchi Mayuri seems to have discovered a new continent. Although he also knows some drugs that can make people hallucinate, and has even studied the drug that can forcibly control the actions of others. If my memory serves me right, there was once a person in the Full Realization Organization who was able to change other people's memories. However, even so, he has never thought that people's subconscious can be changed. This time Senju Starry Night has opened up his new thinking. The above includes the ability to change other people's memories, but only by editing other people's memories to interfere with other people's memories. It's nothing compared to something like changing the subconscious mind. Hearing that Senju Starry Night actually has the ability to change the subconscious mind, Kurotsuchi Mayuri was instantly overwhelmed with curiosity. Interesting. It's really interesting. Then Senju-sanksi, I can prepare a fusion experiment for you to transform the soul. As for how to change the subconscious mind, I will ask you to perform it next. Kurotsuchi Mayuri brought a group of people to his laboratory, which has the most advanced equipment in the entire Soul Society. Since Nirvana Dream is also an experiment derived from the Artificial Soul Project, the equipment here can still be put into use directly. Put Kujo Nozomi and Inubakajira in 2 containers respectively. And then Kurotsuchi Mayuri put all his attention on Senju Hoshiya. He also wonders how Senju Starry Night can change a person's subconscious mind. Then next, let's start to lose. Chapter 336, The Beginning of Fusion. Gearing up, Kurotsuchi Mayuri opened one of the containers for Senju Starry Night. Inubakajira's Uo, who was controlled by him, is stored here. The ability to use the Yihun pill to repair one's own damage, and even restore physical strength, is really impressive. If it wasn't for Senju's reminder, I'm afraid I might not be able to control you. Kurotsuchi Mayuri looked at Inubakajira, the subordinate who made him lose face, with a gloomy face. He wished he could tear Inubakajira to pieces right now, but in order to witness that interesting scientific experiment with his own eyes, Kurotsuchi Mayuri finally suppressed the anger in his heart and said, after making room for Senju Starry Night, Kurotsuchi Mayuri stepped aside. Senju Kusanai standing in front of Inubakajira's Uo was also a little helpless at the moment. You must know that this kind of ninjutsu that can change the subconscious mind consumes a lot of energy. I just used it on Aizen when I was in Xiuyu Palace, but now it has reached the limit of physical strength. Fortunately, With the blessing of Rinnegan in Senju cells, the recovery ability of Qianzixing I, whose body circumference is far superior to that of ordinary people, is also unmatched by ordinary people. In order to integrate Kujo Nozomi and Inoba Kaijirosa, Senju Hoshiya had no choice but to do so. However, Inoba Kaijirozuo is also very restless at this moment. Senju Starry Night, you are just a special contract Shinigami. Don't think that you can be complacent with some small tricks. Even if you can control my actions, my soul is absolutely not bound by anyone. Before the words fell, Senju Kusanai was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. Reincarnation Distinguished heavenly gods. With a surge of chakra, Liguru Rinnegan instantly became red. After all, it is Liguru Rinnegan's state, and the effect of the distinguished heavenly gods displayed is very significant, and the effect is even much higher than Shizui's Sharingan distinguished heavenly gods. After successfully casting the skill, Inlang Zuo's entire body trembled instantly. However, after a while, Inabakajira Zuo, who was struggling desperately, also became extremely peaceful. Seeing these changes in front of him, Kurotsuchi Mayuri's expression became very interesting. It turned out to be an ability that can be released through the eyes. It's obviously not Zanpei Kuto, nor Kaido's, so how does the ability in the eyes achieve this effect? If the strength allows, Kurotsuchi Mayuri may now dig out Senju Kusanai's eyes and study them carefully. But right now, there are more important things to do. Looking at Inoba Kaijirosa in front of him, Kurotsuchi Mayuri smiled sullenly and asked, Inoba Kaijirozuo, my former 7 seats. Are you willing to sacrifice your soul for the Kujo Yoshimi in front of you? In the process of devouring in the near future, are you willing to take the initiative to dedicate and not resist? Kurotsuchi Mayuri looked expectantly at Inoba Kaijirosa in front of him, and the latter nodded one after another to show that there was no problem. This stunned Kurotsuchi Mayuri. The subconscious has actually changed. Inoba Kaijirozuo, who was still cursing just now, turned into a good baby who is not good at talking. In this way, he is even really willing to actively cooperate with the devouring of souls. This is really rare. Senju, your ability is really interesting. Since you have solved this problem, I will try my best to create a brand new reformed soul for you. While speaking, Kurotsuchi Mayuri directly sealed Inoba Kaijirozu's container, and through a special method, Inoba Kaijirozuo was refined into a human pill. In other words, the fusion mentioned by Kurotsuchi Mayuri is to melt the soul of one party into a pill. In this way, another person can become extraordinary through devouring. At this moment, Zhuo Wangxi looks up at the sky, feeling the mediocrity of the world. Perhaps, there will be no pain only if you have never been here. For a moment Kujo Wang really wanted to escape. However, Kurotsuchi Mayuri has successfully smelted Inoba Kaijirosa into a pill. Kujo Wangxi looked at the familiar stranger in front of him, feeling endless sadness in his heart. There was no time to be sentimental. Jingling took his special medicine and walked up to Zhuo Wangxi. Eat him, and you'll get what you want. In the beginning, Kujo Momomi escaped to the present world just to escape the pursuit of Inoba Kaijirozuo. However, at this moment, she actually had the opportunity to devour that big conspirator. 3.7 Thinking of this, Kujo Wangxi's eyes suddenly became appraised. Senju Xinya looked back at the once mighty Inoba Kaijirosa, who was beaten like this at this moment. Feeling helpless when there is no weight room, Xiao Wangmai finally gave up his original idea. Can you complete the fusion just by eating it? Kujo Wangxi confirmed again, and after getting an affirmative answer, he actually put the pill into his mouth directly. Everyone was completely shocked when they saw such a scene. Under the eyes of everyone, Kujo Nozomi really merged with Inoba Kaijirozuo's cultivation power. Chapter 337, Smooth Integration. Fusion. Start. GGGG. After starting the fusion program, Kurotsuchi Mayuri couldn't help but let out a strange laugh. Kurotsuchi Mayuri, who was still watching, did not see any rejection at the moment. It can really be integrated smoothly. Is it really possible to change the subconscious mind? This is really amazing. While Kurotsuchi Mayuri sighed, his eyes were also very focused on observing the experiment, because as long as the souls of both parties have a rejection reaction, the whole experiment will actually be very difficult to proceed. It can be said that the risk of medical failure is still very high. With the start of the fusion, the surrounding Ryatsu also began to expand rapidly, and the green Ryatsu wrapped the souls of the two people, spinning extremely fast. The powerful Ryatsu soared into the sky, filling 29 in the entire laboratory in an instant. The dark green light continued to bloom, and then was gradually sucked into the container along with the fusion of souls. The whole process is very smooth, without any waves. Seeing such a scene, Kurotsuchi Mayuri was also shocked. It is obviously a very painful process, but there are actually people who can bear the pain of rotting bones and heart, endure torment of the soul being torn apart, and there is no resistance in the whole process. After seeing Senju Starry Night's means, Kurotsuchi Mayuri's eyes couldn't help but jump. I didn't expect that Senju's 3 seats really have 2 brushes. After confirming that there would be no rejection, Kurotsuchi Mayuri also proceeded to the next step. When the process reached the last step, Inoba Kaijirozuo's entire soul seemed to have turned into a pill, which was the crystallization that condensed half of the soul power of Tsunosuke. If you think about it carefully, this operation is a bit like squeezing juice. However, what was squeezed out was nothing more than changing from fruit to soul. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Kurotsuchi Mayuri directly fed this pill to Kujo Wankmai as if he had taken some panacea. Inabakaji Langsuk's soul had turned into an essence of power at this moment, and it had already merged into Kujo and Ozumi's body at this moment. Senju Kusanai watched Kurotsuchi Mayuri's miraculous operation with a slightly relieved expression. He really deserves to be the craziest and purest scientist. Although he has a weird personality, his strength should not be underestimated. After Inabakaji's Uo was fused, the light in the laboratory completely disappeared. The container was reopened, and the Kujiashi inside was suspended in midair, with bright green Ryatsu glowing all over its body. The whole person also looks full of oppression. Is this the perfect body that transforms the soul? What an incredible power! Kurotsuchi Mayuri's expression is very excited, because this is his excellent experimental subject. Apart from Kurotsuchi Mayuri, the other captains and the spirit skeleton captain also felt the power in Kujo and Ozumi's body. You must know that after merging into Yaniaxa before, his power alone can instantly kill the spirit skeleton Aiz Nanao. In addition, the crowd also defeated Rukia, Abararanchi, Ishida Oyu, Sado Yasutora and Holoyakugo one after another. You must know that the strength of these people is not comparable to that of ordinary dead people, especially the completely Holoyakugo, whose strength has broken through the level of the superior espada, and the general captain is not his opponent. With one enemy against many, they can still be so calm, which shows how powerful the power to transform the soul is. In fact, the principle is also simple. It is nothing more than the logic of engulfing between virtues, devour each other with the power to transform the soul, and then the effect that can be achieved after swallowing is far superior to ordinary souls. Yaniaxu's power can be said to be the effect that can only be achieved by gathering the power of an unknown number of Yahanwans. But now, this power is completely absorbed by Juo Wangshi. Opening his eyes again, Kujo Wangshi felt that his soul was much lighter. When he was curious, Kurotsuchi Mayuri said with a sinister smile, "Do you feel that it is very different from before?" After being reminded by Kurotsuchi Mayuri, Kujo and Ozumi also nodded hesitantly. "It feels much lighter than before, and there are not so many noisy voices in my ears." 523 inches. Hearing Kujo and Ozumi's emotion, Senju Kusunya smiled slightly and explained instead of Kurotsuchi Mayuri. Because the operation performed by Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri just now is soul smelting, that is, the soul smelting technology is used to remove impurities in the soul. Hearing this, Sayo Wangmai still looked puzzled. Looking at Ozumi Kujo with a puzzled face, Senju Kusunya could only continue to explain. The reason why Inabakaji's Uo was able to fuse is also because of the soul melting of Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri. During the fusion process, Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri conducted an unreadable fusion of both of you. Only by melting the soul can soul fusion be performed. The difference is that Inabakaji's Uo is a soul that has been thoroughly smelted, while you have only carried out the initial smelting. The transformation of your soul actually comes from the power of Yihun Pill. The difference is that you are the product of multiple Yihun Pills devouring each other. Chapter 338, How to Repay. The reason why Yaniaxa has such powerful power is also because the soul has swallowed a large number of transformed souls. Later, after the soul of Yuuxa was decomposed, it was made into 2 Yihun Pills, and you were one of them. 17. That is to say, your soul is actually composed of thousands or even more Yihun Pills. Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri's smelting is the ability to completely remove those soul magazines from within you. Without those magazines, your soul will naturally be much lighter. The remnants of those other Yihun Pills that used to linger in your ears will also disappear. After listening to Senju Kusanai's explanation, Kujo and Ozumi heaved a sigh of relief. So this is Since becoming conscious, Kujo Wangmai has been recalling all kinds of painful cries in his ears. No matter how you fight, you can't get rid of this torture. So for a while, she wanted to be devoured by Inabakaji's Uo. Now, however, this problem has finally been resolved. Mr. Senju, thank you. Kujo and Ozumi, this is a sincere thanks. It was Senju Starry Night who solved her constant troubles. However, after everything was over, the expressions between the captain and the spirit skeleton captain seemed very slight. Now that the matter of Inabakaji's Uo has been resolved, how should these spirit skeleton captains deal with it? This is a big problem. You must know that the strength of the captain of the spirit skeleton is a little higher than that of the main body, and not only the ability is completely figured out, but also the heart, character and even temper are the same. Some captains are difficult to get along with harmoniously. To give a simple example, these 2 Zaraki Kenpaki are very difficult to deal with. In terms of Zaraki Kenpaki's character, he must fight until he dies. Wouldn't 2 Zaraki Kenpaki fight upside down? But Senju Kusanai doesn't care about these things. After eliminating Inabakaji's Uo's threat, Senju Kusunya came to Captain Yamamoto at the door of the laboratory. Captain Yamamoto, since the threat of transforming the soul has been resolved, shouldn't it be time to prepare for the next big battle? With a reminder of Senju Starry Night, Yamamoto Genryu's breath also sank. That's right. The comeback of the Bbook from thousands of years ago is the most important thing affecting the survival of the Soul Society. In comparison, everything else is unimportant. After thinking it through, Yamamoto Genryu's looked at Senju Starry Night and sighed. It seems that the old man is really old, and it is difficult to make decisive decisions when facing many things. Senju 3 seats, according to what you mean, how do you deal with these spirit skeleton captains? Facing Yamamoto Genryu's question, Senju Xinya smiled slightly, and looked in the direction of Kujo Nozomi. Isn't the answer obvious? Since the spirit skeleton captains are all reformed souls, the meaning of their existence is to protect Jingling. Now that Jingling Court needs their strength, it is naturally time for them to make sacrifices. Hearing these words from Senju Starry Night, Yamamoto Genryu's was a little puzzled. Senju, I don't quite understand what you mean. You said that Captain Spirit Skeleton should make sacrifices. How can this be done? While speaking, Senju Xinya had a smile on his mouth, looked at Kurotsuchi Mayuri and Kujo Nozomi, and said with a smile, Captain Yamamoto will not forget it so soon, right? Didn't Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri refine Kanhata Kaijirosa into a soul alchemy just now through the method of soul smelting? This method can not only solve the problem of the captain of the skeleton, but also strengthen the strength of the captains. Vertical bar, isn't this killing two birds with one stone? Hearing this, Yamamoto Genryu's understood the meaning of Senju's Starry Night talk. However, Yamamoto Genryu's was full of worry. If you know that the strength of the spirit skeleton captain is even higher than the body, are they really willing to be refined? Not to mention whether it's painful during the refining process. Let an individual who originally had independent consciousness sacrifice himself to achieve another individual exactly like himself. The crux of the problem is that these spirit skeletons had a chance to replace the original captain. Would they really give up? This thing sounds a bit unbelievable. Facing Yamamoto Genryu's worries, Senju Xinai's expression was very, positive. You must know that in the turmoil of soul transformation back then, Uzuxu was successfully resurrected. However, in order to stop Uzuxu's conspiracy, the captains of the spirit skeletons finally chose to sacrifice their lives to protect Jingling. If it is only based on speculation, Senju Xinai is certainly not sure about the subsequent development of these events. However, after being verified by reality, Ren Minutes Xinai was certainly able to confirm the loyalty of these spirit skeleton captains. Thinking of this, Senju Xinai said with a smile, just tell Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri to smelt, and leave the rest to me. Looking at Senju Xinai's meaningful smile, Yamamoto Genryu's heart was also shaken. Chapter 339, I'm willing to do anything. Reminiscent of Senju Xinya's operation of subconsciously modifying Inaba Kaijirosa before, Yamamoto Genryu's subconsciously felt that Senju Xinya had to repeat the same trick again. Senju, your abilities are indeed heaven-defying, so you don't have to worry about the integration of your abilities. Hearing Yamamoto Genryu's muttering to himself, Senju Star Yoruichi found it very funny. The skeleton captains themselves are loyal to the Soul Society, even giving their lives for it. You don't need to use 6 paths distinguished heavenly gods yourself at all. However, he did not immediately deny it. At this moment, Yamamoto Genryu's expression is a little dignified. Fortunately, you are a friend rather than an enemy. Otherwise the old man would be afraid after thinking about it. In the middle of speaking, Yamamoto Genryu's expression suddenly became a little surprised, as if he remembered something. He asked, Senju-sanji, are you sure you haven't used subconscious illusions on me, right? Thinking back to the time when I appointed Senju Xinai as the special Shinigami, it must have been a subconscious illusion at that time, right? While speaking, Yamamoto Genryu's showed a very worried expression. Captain Yamamoto, please rest assured that all your decisions come from your own wise ideas, and no one will make any changes to your ideas. Even though Senju Xinai said so, Yamamoto Genryu's was still a little worried. He didn't change his own thoughts, which means that the other party still has the ability to change his subconscious. For a moment Yamamoto Genryu's instantly felt the danger from Senju Starry Night. However, at this moment, Yamamoto Genryu's didn't have the energy to think so much. Now that the plan has been finalized, the captain of the skeleton can deal with it, and he can also improve the strength of his Goutai 13th squad, so it will be much easier to deal with the next Invisible Empire. With this in mind, Yamamoto Genryu's looked in the direction of Kurotsuchi Mayuri, and ordered coldly, Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri, fellow spirit skeleton captains, you must have heard the plan of Senju 3 seats just now. I want to hear your opinions. As soon as the words fell, Kurotsuchi Mayuri, who was watched by Yamamoto Genryu's, spoke first, and said with a smile, after the experiment just now, it is very feasible to use the spirit bones to transform and strengthen the soul. With Kurotsuchi Mayuri's confirmation, the other spirit skeleton captains glanced at each other and nodded to confirm each other. As long as you can protect the Soul Society, what's the point of sacrificing yourself? After all, it inherited the idea of the main body, and all the captains reached a consensus. We shouldn't have formed individuals alone. The Soul Society had suspended this experiment many years ago. It was Inobakajiro's predecessor, Torioshi, who broke the taboo and restudied this experiment. Now that everything is back to normal, we, as a product of this experiment, naturally have no need to exist. It would be great to be able to light the way of the Soul Society with our remains. Seeing the awakening of the spirit skeleton captains, Yamamoto Genryu's eye was slightly moved. I didn't expect that even the counterfeit products that were copied had such an authentic belief. This is simply too surprising. However, although he has a heart of love for talents, Captain Link is an existence that cannot be tolerated by common sense. With this in mind, Yamamoto Genryu's eye closed his eyes slightly and gave the order, "Just follow the plan," Senju Kusinai said. After receiving the order from Yamamoto Genryu's eye, Kurotsuchi Mayuri immediately began preparations for fusion. You must know that so many captains need to be integrated, which will take a certain amount of time. While everyone was still discussing, Kujo Nozomi approached Senju Kusinai and asked in a low voice, "Mr. Senju, I have something to say to you." Senju Kusinai didn't care too much about Kujo Wangshi's shyness, but just smiled and said, "That's right, I happen to have something to tell you. Let's find a quiet place to talk." After solving the crisis of transforming the soul here, Senju Kusinai brought Kujo Momomi to his 5th Division team building. This side has been empty since the Aizen Rebellion. After the two entered the room, Senju Kusinai closed the door very considerately. Seeing the shy Kujo Nozomi in front of him, Senju Kusinai smiled and asked, "Do you have anything to say to me?" As if immersed in the tenderness of Senju's starry night, Kujo Wangshi was a little lost for a while. "The main thing is to thank you. After all, you have helped me so much, and I haven't had time to thank you." While speaking, Kujo Wangmai's expression became a little rosy. You must know that she wants to die with Inobakajirosa with the confidence of death, but she really has a way to reversely merge Inobakajiro's UO without going to Senju Starry Night first, and even prevent Quinutsu's rebirth. "I really don't know how to repay you. As long as Senju Kusinai is willing, I'm willing to do anything for Senju Kusinai." Chapter 340, SSS Level Talent. "Is this true?" Senju Kusinai reconfirmed excitedly, while Kujo Momi, who was on the side, had already blushed brightly. However, at the moment when he heard Senju Kusinai's question, Kujo Nozomi still mustered up his courage and nodded heavily. "Yes, as long as I can repay your kindness, I'm willing to do anything." With Kujo Wangshi's affirmative answer, of course Senju Kusinai no longer held back, looked at Kujo Wangmai with a smile, and said, "Actually, I just happen to have something to discuss with you." I heard that Senju Kusinai had this idea a long time ago. Kujo Nozomi was really a little shy for a while. In other words, has Mr. Senju already had this idea? Looking at Nozomi Kujo, who is confused, Senju Kusinai nodded without thinking. "Yes, I have had this idea for a long time. You must know that the next battle is no small matter. The Invisible Empire that has been lurking for thousands of years. If you want to dig it out thoroughly, you still need your ability. I was thinking of discussing it with you after you had a rest. Since you proposed it yourself, I'll talk to you by the way." Senju Starry Night is talking about the Invisible Empire. You must know that the existence of the Invisible Empire is beyond everyone's imagination. Who would have thought that Yuhabush, who was thousands of years ago, would build his country of hard work in the shadow of Jingling? But it is definitely not a simple matter to enter the Invisible Empire from the shadows. Even with Rinnegan's space ability, Senju Kusinai can't open the portal without knowing the coordinates. As a result, if you want to find the Invisible Empire, you must rely on Juo Wangshi's Lehwang. After hearing what Senju Kusinai said, the Kujo Wang in front of him looked cute but full of anticipation. However, Senju Starry Night has changed its style of painting and directly mentioned the Invisible Empire. This caught Juo Wangshi a little by surprise. "Invisible Empire?" Kujo Wangshi repeated. Senju Kusinai nodded repeatedly. "That's right, the Invisible Empire. You must know that the current Invisible Empire is lurking in the shadow of Jingling, and you still need your power to connect the channel of the Invisible Empire." Senju Kusinai spoke earnestly, but Kujo Wangshi was stunned. "That's it?" Juo Wangshi felt very surprised. After so long mental preparation, he had planned to make a promise with his body, but you are talking about this kind of thing? Juxiao Wangshi's breath sank, and he said coldly, "Let's talk about it. After all, this kind of thing needs to be ordered by Captain Yamamoto himself." Seeing Kujo Wangmai's disappointed gaze, Senju Kusinai smiled slightly. "Since you have integrated the power of Inobakajiro's UO, your Zanpei Kuto should also have new changes, right? Can you show me?" Senju Star Yoruichi faces anticipation. Kujo looked at the truth and heard the words, but just looked at the Senju Starry Night in surprise. "See Zanpei Kuto? Am I not prettier than Zanpei Kuto?" Obviously, he was well prepared, but he was really caught off guard. Hearing that he wanted to see his own Zanpei Kuto, Nozomi Kujo hesitated for a moment, but finally agreed. Slowly pulling out Zanpei Kuto from his outstretched hand, Nozomi Kujo directly put the knife in front of his face, and released Zanpei Kuto with the opening Shikai. "Let's sway, it will rain when the popularity fades." The light flashed, and Kujo Nozomi's Zanpei Kuto went straight into Shikai form. 0. asking for flowers 0. It's not over yet, with Ryatsu's gradual enhancements, and Zanpei Kuto once again getting new twists. Roll over, Moyun. Accompanied by the new liberation language, the light blooms in the next second. A new Ryatsu instantly envelops a new Zanpei Kuto, Black Halo, although it is a combination of the effects of Lei Aikong and Shu, but Moyun's strength doesn't stop there. You must know that Lei Aikong's ability can manipulate time through the rotation of Zanpei Kuto to create the door of space. Not only can you freely enter and exit the boundary, but also have some special effects. After experiencing Shikai, the Moyu Halo has obtained part of the effect of the rain when the redness fades, thus strengthening the ability of this space system. Looking at Kujo Wangmai in front of him, Tang Xinai nodded in relief. It seems that my guess is right. With your current ability, you can definitely open the mezzanine in the shadows, so it will be much easier to find the Invisible Empire. Having said that, Senju Xinai changed the subject and looked at Kujo Nozomi with a smirk on his face. Honestly speaking, after the smelting of your soul, your appearance seems to be more beautiful. It has to be said that the uneven curves seem to be more attractive than before, and the snow-white skin is even more rosy. With short green hair and a capable figure, the whole person looks very hearty but charming. Looking at Kujo Mochiko's current appearance, Kid Starry Night suddenly thought of a question. Miss Juo Wangshi, you said that you are an artificial soul, even if you have gone through the stage of devouring each other and accumulated infinite power. But the soul created out of nothing is not the same as the real soul. Chapter 341, White and Tender Peach. When it comes to things like that, Juo Wangshi still doesn't understand. Looking at Kujo Nozomi with a blank face, Senju Xinai continued, although Miss Kujo Nozomi is beautiful and sexy, she is a man-made soul after all. I wonder if she has the functions of a normal person. Function? What function? Kujo Wangshi obviously didn't understand. Seeing the doubts on Kujo Komi's face, Senju Xinai could only cut to the chase. For example, the function of pregnancy? You said, can an artificial soul conceive like a normal person? Even though he had experienced the ideological struggle just now, Kujo Wangshi never expected that Senju Xinai in front of him would speak so bluntly with through 7th. What's more, it's such a very private matter. He became very shy for a while, and said coyly, actually, I don't know, I haven't experienced such a thing, how would I know? Seeing Kujo Momi's small gesture, Senju Xinai nodded in satisfaction. He didn't refuse immediately, and his expression was even so condescending. Obviously he had already agreed in his heart. Looking at Kujo Nozomi with an expectant face, Senju Xinai couldn't help feeling, women, what a strange creature. While speaking, Senju Xinai caressed Juo Wangshi's red and soft waist. The softness of the tentacles makes Senju Xinai a little fondle admiringly. After a short 2 hours, the team building of the 5th division has become a mess. At this time, Senju Xinai also heard the long-lost system prompt. Ding! Congratulations to host for meeting the conditions. It is detected that Kujo Wangshi has successfully conceived, rewarding the host-related talent, soul absorption. After hearing the system prompt, Senju Xinai immediately opened the system panel to check the talent attributes. Soul absorption, enhanced talent, talent level SSS. After it takes effect, it can strengthen the absorption effect of Rinnegan and Kaidos, and obtain corresponding abilities through the absorbed soul. After seeing the talent profile, Genki and Xinai was completely shocked. This effect is too heaven-defying. Isn't this equivalent to adding an infinite evolutionary talent? If you fancy someone else's talent, you only need to absorb the other person's soul to possess the other person's special ability. Just imagine, if you devour the opponent's soul when you are fighting with Yuhabush, wouldn't you also be able to obtain the corresponding ability? Not to mention the combat ability. The omniscient and omnipotent effect alone is enough to become a heaven-defying existence. I didn't expect it to be so simple, but I like to mention an SSS-level talent, especially type ants. Having said that, it seems that I have not returned to Konoha for a long time. I don't know what kind of impact the time chaos caused by the sudden turbulence will have. Did I go back to the past, or did I come to the future? Regardless of these, is it possible for me to return to the original time and space? Thinking of this, Senju Xinai couldn't think of a clue. Simply shaking his head desperately, he simply didn't think about it. It doesn't matter which time and space you stay in, the only important thing is to enjoy the present moment. After thinking it over, Senju Xinai immediately rubbed Kujo Momi next to him. Feeling the full and warm body temperature, Ren Minutes Xinai also stretched. Just as I was about to wake up, Hinamori Momo's voice came from outside the door. Senju 3 seats. Excuse me, are the 3 Senju seats available? Hearing Hinamori Momo's voice, Senju Starry Night replied immediately, I'm here. What's up with Vice Captain Hinamori? After Senju Xinai got dressed, he was ready to open the door. After the morning light outside shone into the room, the dazzling light also woke up Kujo Wangmai who was sleeping. At this moment, Hinamori Momo immediately expressed the origin of this trip after seeing the Senju Starry Night. Senju 3 seats, Captain Yamamoto asked me to call you, as if to discuss the upcoming battle. Hearing what Hinamori Momo just said, It is obvious that the spirit skeleton captains have successfully dealt with them. It seems that a general attack should indeed be launched. Vice Captain Peach, wait outside now, we leave after we get dressed. At this time, Hinamori Momo happened to see Kujo Momo, which had just been made inside. Ah. This figure is too good. No, what I mean is, put on quickly, I'll wait for you outside. Although she has been a Shinigami in Soul Society for so long, 1.8 Hinamori Momo, who still looks like a little girl, has never seen such a scene. Especially Juxiao Wangshi's just right lines, which are just right, are simply the good figure she has dreamed of. Although my skin may be fairer and tenderer than the other person's, but although I am called Hinamori Momo, I don't have a peach like Kujo Momo. How should I put it? White and tender, plump and attractive. Really angry just thinking about it. After a short wait, Senju Kusanai and Kujo Nozomi also got dressed and walked out of the 5th team's team building. You are finally out, come with me. Captain Yamamoto has been waiting for a long time. Chapter 342, The Secret of the Invisible Empire. Hinamori Momo blushed. Her mind was full of the scene just now. This is heaven-defying too. On the way to the first team building, Hinamori Momo's eyes wandered to Senju Kusanai's position from time to time. You must know that she has also been dead for more than 100 years, and she has been feeling overwhelmed by the fact that she died without experiencing it before she was alive. Apart from Xiaobai and Aizen in Soul Society, the shy she has no other friends. However, her feelings for those two people do not belong to the feelings between men and women. One is brother and sister, and Japan is more like father and daughter. I have to say that after seeing Senju Starry Night, Hinamori Momo's heart that had been calm for a long time finally moved. It's not a long journey, but Hinamori Momo's heart is indeed full of mixed feelings. Captain Yamamoto is waiting for you inside. Go in by yourself. After O3 finally arrived at the team building, Hinamori Momo ran away in a hurry. Senju Kusanai looked at Nozomi Kujo behind him, and smiled lightly. If you want to find the existence of the invisible empire, you still need your power. Let's go in together. Facing Senju Starry Night's invitation, Nozomi Kujo did not refuse. The door was pushed open, and the team dormitory was full of people. The captains of the Jingling court had already stood on both sides and waited. Seeing Senju Starry Night and Kujo Nozomi, Yamamoto Genryusai raised his eyebrows. This is a Shinigami captain's meeting. I'm afraid it's inappropriate for this little girl to come along. This meeting is a matter of life and death for the Soul Society, and Yamamoto Motoinagi Shichiguni naturally dare not neglect it. However, Senju Kusanai smiled lightly and explained, Captain Yamamoto, if you want to find the existence of the invisible empire, you must borrow the power of Kujo Nozomi. Could you have forgotten her ability? With Senju Starry Night's reminder, Yamamoto Genryusai also recalled the power of the Black Moon Halo back then. After all, being able to fight against so many captains of the skeleton with one's own strength, this power itself should not be underestimated. What's more, if you want to find the invisible empire, you also need her power area. Forget it, then you two should come in quickly. After Senju Kusanai and Kujo Wangshi entered the main hall, the gate also began to close slowly. Is everyone here now? Yamamoto Genryusai confirmed it again, and the deputy captain of the first team stood up and replied, reporting to Commander Yamamoto, Urahara Kisuke and Shion Yoruichi were originally involved in this meeting, and they have not responded yet. Yamamoto was not surprised to learn that Urahara Kisuke and Shion Yoruichi did not appear. That's all. After all, it's an internal matter of our Goutai 13th Division, and there's nothing you can do if others don't want to come. Let's talk about business next. Halfway through the speech, Yamamoto Genryusai looked at Senju Kusanai's position. Senju 3 seats. After the previous Aizen incident, I believe in your ability and character. About the matter of Yuhabush, the old man really failed to completely obliterate it 1,000 years ago. This is the old man's mistake. The invisible empire you mentioned earlier, can you explain it to us captains in detail? It was before the time came, so Yamamoto Genryusai didn't get to the bottom of it. However, after experiencing the turmoil of transforming the soul, Yamamoto Genryusai has to pay attention to this matter. Senju Kusanai looked up at Yamamoto Genryusai, and explained with a smile, the so-called invisible empire is naturally beyond the reach of deep eyes. No shadow, no form. Senju Kusanai said some ambiguous words, but looked at the shadow outside the window. You must know that Jingling is a building made of spirit particles, but these buildings also have shadows. Don't you find it very strange? After Senju Starry Night's prompt, Yamamoto Genryusai frowned. You mean to say that there is a problem with the buildings in Jingling Court? Although the old saying goes, the most dangerous place is the safest place. Yet Yamamoto Genryusai still couldn't believe it. If those Quincy's are hidden in my 027 building in Jingling, how are those Ryatsu hidden? Yamamoto Genryusai's problem is also beyond the reach of others, especially Kurotsuchi Mayuri, the captain of the Technology Development Bureau of the 12th Squad, was even more disbelieving. I have surveyed the spirits in the entire Jingling Court at the beginning of the technology. In theory, this kind of problem will never occur. Senju Starry Night looked at Kurotsuchi Mayuri, You mean, your technical opening has surveys on the buildings of Jingling? Facing Senju Starry Night's question, Kurotsuchi Mayuri was a little impatient. Isn't this a matter of course? During so many battles, the buildings of Jingling Court have been damaged many times. You must know that these are made of spirit particles. It is impossible to use conventional repair methods. It was all repaired by our Technology Development Bureau before. This process required multiple surveys. If there is a problem with the building, how could our Technology Development Bureau not know? Chapter 343, Kingdom in the Shadows. After Kurotsuchi Mayuri's objection, the others felt very reasonable. In an instant, if there is a problem with the building of the Soul Society, it is absolutely impossible for them to be unaware of it based on their captain-level existence. Especially Kurotsuchi Mayuri, although he has a weird personality. But if you only look at scientific research ability, Kurotsuchi Mayuri is definitely the most cautious existence among so many captains. Even Kurotsuchi Mayuri can't see the problem with the building, and others naturally feel that Senju Starry Night is playing tricks. Facing the doubts of Kurotsuchi Mayuri and many captains, Senju Kusanai didn't care at all. Who said there is something wrong with the architecture of Jingling Court? Did I say that? Senju Yoruichi looked at everyone with a speechless expression, as if the captains were making trouble for no reason just now. Seeing this, Kurotsuchi Mayuri was so angry that he was dying, but he didn't dare to attack. You must know that Senju Starry Night can change other people's subconscious mind. If you are accidentally tricked, you don't know what the consequences will be. If the other party makes me forget the previous scientific research experiments, wouldn't the things I have accumulated over the years be destroyed in one fell swoop? Thinking of things like that, Kurotsuchi Mayuri can only endure. Since the building is fine, what do you mean by what you just said? The question of Kurotsuchi Mayuri is also what many captains want to know, including Yamamoto General Yuzai. Everyone's eyes are also on the position of Senju Starry Night. Under the gaze of everyone, Senju Kusanai smiled lightly, and asked back, Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri, I know you are very dedicated, and those buildings must be surveyed very carefully. But what about shadows? Senju Kusanai's words made everyone startled. Shadow? What shadow? Kurotsuchi Mayuri had a sense of foreboding, but still couldn't guess what Senju Kusanai was going to say. However, at this moment, the Senju Starry Night is pointing to the shadow in the yard through the window. Captain Kurotsuchi Mayuri, you haven't inspected the shadow of the building, have you? Hearing Senju Starry Night's question, Kurotsuchi Mayuri was stunned. Does the shadow also need to be surveyed? This was a question he had never thought of. However, before everyone could continue to ask, Senju Kusanai performed shadow imitation and directly connected to the buildings in the yard. Accompanied by the casting of the shadow imitation technique, Senju Kusanai made a random movement, and the shadow of the building also began to move around. It seems to be imitating the movements of Senju Starry Night. In the next second, a phenomenon that no one could understand happened. Boom! Accompanied by a loud noise, the standing building collapsed instantly. Everyone looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief, feeling horrified in their hearts. However, the instigator of all this, Senju Kusanai, has a very indifferent expression. Look, this is my shadow imitation technique, which can control something by controlling the shadow. There's actually a lot about this ability to control shadows. Halfway through the conversation, Senju Kusanai looked at Kiraku Shunsui, King Band Leader. Your Zanpei Kuto Kaiten Kyokatsu should have a similar effect, right? When Senju Kusanai said Kaiten Kyokatsu, even Kiraku Shunsui was taken aback. While his Zanpei Kuto is not a secret in Jingling, Senju Starry Night should theoretically not be known. Especially my own Kaiten Kyokatsu's ability, the ability to hide in the shadows and attack. There are not many people who know my battle scene. However, with a reminder from Senju Starry Night, Lachan Shui is also enlightened. Senju Sanxi, you mean that the enemy manipulated the shadows, and even used the shadows to hide something, right? Seeing that Kiraku Shunsui is so smart and transparent, Senju Starry Night is also very pleased. That's right. Since the leader of the Beijing band can hide in the shadows and launch attacks, others can also use the shadows as a cover to complete their hiding. Hearing this, Kiraku Shunsui couldn't help asking, if that's the case, what exactly are others hiding in the shadows? Kiraku Shunsui's question happened to be the key point, and Senju Kusanai smiled slightly, and said 4 words simply and neatly, the Invisible Empire. As soon as Senju Kusanai's words came out, even Yamamoto Genri Yuzai frowned. The Invisible Empire? Hiding in the shadows? Now the many captains present are all boiling. From Zhao's, it's so possible. How could such a huge invisible empire be hidden in the shadows? Know that the ability to hide in the shadows is special, but it requires a lot of Ryatsu. It is impossible for someone to create such a huge space in the shadows. All the captains said something to each other, and the words were full of doubts. However, Senju Kusanai didn't care about it, and said indifferently, ordinary people may not be able to do it at all. But you Habush can. While talking, you looked at the shadow in the building. Habush's power has far exceeded our imagination, and it is not difficult for him to build a spiritual space in the shadow. Chapter 344, the Jingling court under surveillance. Unbelievable expressions appeared on the faces of the captains who learned the secret. Constructing a spiritual space in the shadows? Can anyone actually do this? The expressions of many captains were full of suspicion and doubt, but the expression of Yamamoto Genryusai became more and more dignified. Others may not be able to do it, but Juhabush may really be able to. The captains noticed the worried expression on the chief captain's face, and murmured in their hearts. You must know that Captain Yamamoto is known as the strongest Shinigami in the millennium. Whether it is Zanpakuto, Kaido, or swordsmanship and physical skills, they all have extraordinary attainments. Not only that, the Ryatsu of Yamamoto's captain is not what ordinary people can imagine. Such a powerful Captain Yamamoto is actually afraid of someone. This is incredible too. Is the Invisible Empire really that powerful? Juhabush alone can construct such a huge space in the shadows? 320 even big enough to build an invisible empire? Seeing that Captain Yamamoto believed it a little bit, everyone naturally didn't dare to be careless anymore. At this moment, all the captains looked at Senju Kusanai's position. Since Senju 3 seats have known this secret for a long time, they must have a strategy to deal with it. Facing everyone's expectations, Senju Kusanai did not answer directly, but looked at Kujo Momi next to him. This is my strategy. While talking, Senju Kusanai put his hand on Kujo Nozomi's shoulder. Seeing such a scene, everyone's faces were uncertain. Isn't this the reformed soul of Inubuka Jirazuo who just merged with it? Is the fate of our Jingling caught in the hands of someone who transforms the soul? Although the captains were a little bit aggrieved, but now that, Ajia, things have come to this point, they have no other way. They can only listen to Senju Kusanai's opinion, and try to trust Kujomochi in front of him. Yamamoto Genryusai also let out a long sigh. Since it's Senju's opinion, we might as well listen to it. With the words of Yamamoto Genryusai, many captains finally quieted down. Senju Kusanai glanced around for a week, and said calmly, the geographical location of the Invisible Empire is very special. It is the Minister of Shadows hidden in the buildings of Jinglingting. If you want to confront the Invisible Empire head-on, you must find the location of the Invisible Empire. This requires breaking the seal from the shadows, so that the Invisible Empire can emerge from the shadows. After Senju Kusanai finished speaking, he looked at Kujo Nozomi. At this moment, Kujo Wangmai seemed to understand the meaning of Senju Starry Night, so he stood up and said, although I am transforming the soul, I am still a member of the Jingling Court after all. If I can contribute to the protection of Jingling Court, I am not very willing to serve. With Juo Wangshi's guarantee, the other captains no longer doubted it. Since everyone has said so, then I have no objection. I have no objection either. Let's do it. According to Senju's 3 seats, everyone expressed their opinions one after another. However, after learning that the Invisible Empire has been hidden under their noses for thousands of years every day, it is still difficult for everyone to calm down. You must know that all of them have lived in the Soul Society for thousands of years, but they never thought that the biggest enemy has been operating under their noses. This is simply unbelievable. Just as everyone was still discussing, the shadows in the yard suddenly twisted. The following Ryatsu skyrocketed instantly, and a building like a gate rose slowly from the shadows. Seeing such a scene, everyone's expressions were extremely shocked. Didn't expect it to be confirmed so soon. At this moment, Senju Starry Night reminds everyone, don't forget that the enemy doesn't just live in the shadows. During this period of thousands of years, I'm afraid Yuhabush has been monitoring every move in Jinglingting through the shadows. After being reminded by Senju Starry Night, everyone suddenly realized. No wonder the timing of this one is so ingenious. It seems that the Invisible Empire has been monitoring Jinglingting's movements through the shadows. Thinking of this, the biting expression became restless again. Just thinking about it makes me gasp. It turned out that my every move was under the surveillance of the other party, and even before the meeting on my side was over, the other party had already made a move. It's really scary. Under the gaze of everyone, the whole picture of the portal slowly appeared in the eyes of everyone. Just as everyone was waiting for something to come out of the door, everyone's expressions were blank, because a child with yellow hair came out of it. With a short stature, he looked no more than 13 or 14 years old. He was wearing a uniform with a high hat and a button, and he was wearing the star cross of the Invisible Empire on his hand. The whole person doesn't look oppressive, but looks like an ordinary little boy among humans. It looks ordinary. Chapter 345, Star-Cross v Gremi. Seeing such a little boy appear out of thin air, everyone looked at each other in blank dismay. Is this an enemy or a friend? Do we need to strike first? What if I kill the wrong person? Everyone was talking about it, but at this moment the little boy with yellow curly hair really smiled and said very politely, kill the wrong person? You don't need to worry about that, because I will never be killed by you. Halfway through the conversation, the little boy immediately smiled. I heard that you captains of Jinglingting are planning to attack our formless empire. The Star Crusaders of the Invisible Empire, Gremi to Yes, Holy Text V. Welcome your advance attack here. If you want to kill me, you can try it. Many captains gathered together at this moment, including Genryusai Shijikuni. So many captain-level Ryatsu could even destroy the entire Soul Society. How could a mere knight of an invisible empire stand in front of so many captains? Is it true that people in the Invisible Empire have this kind of intelligence? If the people in the Invisible Empire are mentally retarded, I feel that the difficulty of attacking seems to be reduced a lot. Hearing that everyone underestimated her, Xiaomi felt chills all over. Are you people underestimating me? Believe me, don't underestimate my ability, or you will pay the price. Despite Gremi's reminder, everyone still showed disapproval. Stop talking big, you, a child, dared to break into Soul Society alone. It seems that we have to teach you a lesson. Little friend, aren't you afraid of flashing your tongue when you say such big words? I feel that there is no need for us to take action at the captain's level, and any player may give you a good beating. Maybe you haven't imagined how powerful the captain of the Soul Society is? The captains were still laughing at the yellow curly-haired kid. Hearing that he had never imagined the strength of the captains, Gremi suddenly smiled, and said in a very calm tone, "You're half right. It's not that I haven't imagined your strength, but if I haven't seen it, I can't know it by imagination alone. So, since you're so confident in your own strength, would any of you be willing to show your strength in front of me?" Gremi smiled very plainly, but this plain smile was contemptuous to the captains present. But Zaraki Kenpaki couldn't stand the kids chattering. Zaraki Kenpaki stood up and pointed at Gremi's nose and said, "Stop talking big here, and let me see your strength." It was found that the person who stood up was Zaraki Kenpaki, and at this moment, the Starry Night of Opening Hands felt instantly stable. You must know that Gremi's ability is very special. The holy word V stands for visionary, which means visionary. As the name suggests, this is the ability to turn what one imagines into reality. This ability can be called heaven-defying. People in the world always criticize others for nothing if they just dream about it, but as long as you have seen this guy who can do everything just by thinking about it, you will understand how peaceful it is to accomplish nothing. The Invisible Empire first let this Gremi take the lead, and it seems that this decision is very correct. If one could directly imagine a group of people with the same strength as all the captains of Team 13, the scene would probably fall into chaos immediately. Seeking flowers. 0. If I hadn't imagined that my body would have a power that my body could not bear, it would have been very difficult to defeat such a person. With this in mind, Senju Kusanai decisively found an open space, and Tan followed Kujo Momomi to watch the battle. This kind of good show doesn't happen every day. Senju Kusanai also happened to be able to verify the strength of soul transformation with his own eyes. Theoretically speaking, after Zaraki Kenpaki completed the soul fusion, there should be a qualitative breakthrough in history. Watching the upcoming battle with full anticipation, Senju Kusanai's expression could even be seen with the naked eye. Kujo Wangshi on the side seemed to have discovered this and asked with a puzzled face, "Mr. Senju, are you really so sure about Captain Zaraki Kenpaki's strength? You must know that this person is specially used by the Intangible Empire to deal with the Jingling court. It is impossible to send a useless person to take the lead." Hearing Kujo Wangmai's analysis, Senju Kusanai's eyes brightened instead. "That's right, since the Invisible Empire has detected the movement of the 13th squad, and since it has exposed itself first, it is natural to want to act first before the 13th squad is ready. The vanguard sent out must naturally be strong enough, and it is absolutely impossible to be a weak chicken. It's a pity that Zaraki Kenpaki is a warrior, and he didn't think of it at all." After hearing Senju Kusanai's analysis, it seemed to be the same as what I had guessed. However, Kujo Wangshi's expression is even more puzzled. Since Mr. Senju has been there, why didn't he mention it? Chapter 346, The Great Power is Imagination. Nozomi Kujo really doesn't understand Senju Kusanai's approach, but this is not easy to explain. Facing Nozomi Kujo, who is thirsty for knowledge, Senju Kusanai just smiled slightly. "Honestly speaking, I don't care about the survival of the Soul Society. I just want to see how strong Zaraki Kenpaki will be after fusing the transformation soul." When Senju Kusanai spoke, his expression was very sincere. However, such an answer made Kujo Wangshi completely unexpected. "Just want to see what Zaraki Kenpaki is capable of?" Then, wasn't Inobu Keijirozu eliminated to protect the Soul Society? You must know that Senju Kusanai did a lot of things in order to eliminate Inobu Keijirozu before Sankiki. However, facing Kujo Wangshi's question, Senju Kusanai replied calmly, "I don't care about the life or death of the Soul Society at all. The reason why I intervene in this matter is entirely because of your existence." Hearing Senju Kusanai's answer, Kujo Wangmai was obviously taken aback. "Because of me?" Kujo Nozomi didn't expect at all that Senju Kusanai did all this for himself. Just as he was about to continue asking, Zaraki Kenpaki at this moment was fighting with another self imagined by Gremi. The swords of the two Zaraki Kenpaki slashed together, and an extremely powerful force burst out instantly. Boom! The deafening cracking sound resounded through the sky and the earth, and the aftermath of the force almost overturned the buildings of the team building. Although Senju Kusanai intends to provide them with an independent different time and space as a battle venue, but wants to see the battle between the two, Gremi must not be teleported. After the imaginary Kenpaki hacked each other for 300 rounds, The wounded Zaraki Kenpaki felt helpless. Hasn't the previous spirit skeleton been refined by Kurotsuchi Mayuri? Why is there another counterfeit here? While feeling emotional, Zaraki Kenpaki wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and continued to sigh. One by one, why are the fakes so powerful? Before the words fell, Zaraki Kenpaki continued to slash in the direction of the counterfeit. Seeing this, the other captains did not dare to act rashly. Seeing such a scene, Kujo Wangmai was a little confused at first. Why didn't those captains do anything? Captain Zaraki Kenpaki can't seem to beat that imposter. Kujo Wang is right, even if it is an imaginary counterfeit, it is impossible to simply defeat it. Perhaps if everyone rushes forward together, they can eliminate this fake Zaraki Kenpaki in the first place. However, since the locality can manufacture one counterfeit product, it might be able to manufacture a second counterfeit product. If the other party made all the captain-level people on their side fake, that scuffle would be beyond the capacity of the entire Soul Society. Facing the bewildered Kujo Wangmai, Tanyik Sinai explained this point very patiently. After hearing these various principles, Zhuo Wangshi suddenly realized it's no wonder that the other captains all stood still. It turned out that they thought of this at the first time. When the two were talking, the real Zaraki Kenpaki was cut all over his body with blood, and the strength around him basically reached the limit. Zaraki Kenpaki, holding Zanpei Kuto with one hand, felt very desperate at this moment. Why can't my strength defeat the enemy in front of me? If I can also release Zanpei Kuto's power, will the ending be different? And at this moment, the imaginary Zaraki Kenpaki is also covered in scars and dripping with blood, as if he has reached the crossbow, feeling like he is fragmented. Looking at the counterfeit in front of him, Zaraki Kenpaki decided to endure pain and pursue the victory. With this belief, Zaraki Kenpaki struggled to stand up, and said with a sad smile, "It seems that the counterfeit products you made can only go so far. Today you let my uncle cut it very happily." Ah ha 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 ha. Zaraki Kenpaki laughed out loud, as if the next second would end the fight. However, at this moment, Gremi also revealed a sinister smile. "Captain Zaraki, you seem to have misunderstood my ability. I seem to have said just now that my ability is to visualize what I imagined. Remember? I can imagine more than just one-offs." As soon as the words fell, accompanied by a yellow light 1.7 ray, the imaginary Zaraki Kenpaki was instantly wrapped tightly. In the next second, the light faded away, and Zaraki Kenpaki, who was originally covered in bruises, returned to his original state at this moment. Seeing such a scene, so many captains present were all stunned. However, Gremi did still calmly say, "Have I said it all before? I am the most powerful existence in the Invisible Empire." I just imagined Zaraki Kenpaki who was not injured just now, and an unharmed Zaraki Kenpaki reappeared. You know, imagination is the most powerful thing in the world. Chapter 347, Cut It Off. Gremi spoke in a very calm tone, but everyone present was still astonished. The main reason is that this heaven-defying ability is simply unsolvable. If you can turn non-existent things into reality through imagination, what if you can imagine the whole world? Is it possible to shatter the void and create the world? I really dare not even think about it. However, Zaraki Kenpaki didn't care what he said, stood up with difficulty while supporting his crumbling body, staring straight at Gremi in front of him, with a disdainful expression on his face. "Stinky boy, you are so loud. Those who don't know think you are a god of some dimension. Isn't it imagination? Let me chop off your head and see how imaginative you are." Before the words were finished, Zaraki Kenpaki came to Gremi's back in a flash, and the speed of his movements was astonishing. Gremi also didn't react, standing on the spot without any movement, and there was no time to dodge. Looking at the scene in front of him, my lord felt that Zaraki Kenpaki was not a worthless reckless man. At the very least, he still knows how to cut the body. The next second, the hand raised the knife and fell. Amidst the sharp edge of the sword, the cold glow bloomed. There seemed to be a life-locking arc in the midair. It was the shadow of the sword remaining in place. At the moment when everyone sighed for his superb swordsmanship, the scene in front of him was so astonishing that he was speechless. I saw that Zaraki Kenpaki's hand was blown away, but Gremi in front of him was still intact, and he was still standing there calmly. Zaraki Kenpaki, who noticed this anomaly, quickly distanced himself and jumped backwards. Almost at the same time, Zaraki Kenpaki's imaginary sword chi slashed directly right where Zaraki Kenpaki was standing just now. After everyone distanced themselves, the fake Zaraki Kenpaki retreated to Gremi's side, and the real Zaraki Kenpaki, who opened the distance, looked at the unscathed Gremi in front of him, and couldn't figure out the reasons in his mind. "What is happening? The knife I just cut definitely hit your body. Why are you still unscathed?" Zaraki Kenpaki asked curiously, but Gremi looked at Zaraki Kenpaki's position with disdain, and said contemptuously, "I've said it many times, imagination is the most powerful calendar in the world. No matter how fierce your sword aura is, no matter how fast your speed is, as long as I imagine my body to be an attribute that cannot be attacked in advance, then no matter how fierce your sword aura is, it will not be able to attack me." After hearing Gremi's explanation, The captains were surprised again. If cannot be attacked is an attribute, then this attribute is too heaven-defying. Just as everyone was marveling at the invincibility of imagination, Senju Kusanai felt a little funny at this moment. This Gremi's body is just a brain sealed in a box, and the so-called body seen in front of him is just an image imagined by this brain. Since it is an illusion, it is naturally immortal. Just like Zaraki Kenpaki just now, even if it is cut to pieces, all you need to do is imagine a brand new body, and all problems will be solved. However, Zaraki Kenpaki couldn't figure this out. Facing the counterfeit Kenpaki, and the so-called Gremi's body, what Zaraki Kenpaki always thought of was to break through the counterfeit's appearance, and then look for an opportunity to hack Gremi's body. I have to say that a reckless man is a reckless man. However, Senju Starry Night did not stop Zaraki Kenpaki's behavior, let alone remind him, because the original Unohana Retsu did not hesitate to die in order to inspire the true strength of Zaraki Kenpaki. However, Zaraki Kenpaki couldn't bear the power gained in exchange for Unohana's death. That's hilarious. And now Gremi can create countless Zaraki Kenpaki of comparable strength through imagination, and with the ability of infinite fantasy, Zaraki Kenpaki will reach a desperate situation sooner or later. Senju Starry Night just wants to see if Kenpaki Zaraki, who is in a desperate situation, can inspire his inner potential. At this moment, Zaraki Kenpaki has reached the end of his strength, and the slash just now has consumed too much of his physical strength. However, Zaraki Kenpaki's expression is still very excited, and he can't help but let out a big laugh. Ha 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 ha, happy. It's been a long time since I've had such a good time. Gremi looked at Zaraki Kenpaki in front of him, feeling very curious in his heart. What are you excited about? How can you still be so excited when facing an enemy you can't slash, and an opponent as strong as you? Gremi also sent out a soul question. However, he doesn't understand Zaraki Kenpaki's personality. The main thing is that the more you fight, the braver you are. It feels good to be cut on the body. With such qualities, it would be a pity not to be an M. After a while, Zaraki Kenpaki adjusted his breath, and then rushed directly in front of the counterfeit with his backhand. Come on, have a good time with me. Chapter 348. The Limit of Strength. During a burst of slashing and killing, Zaraki Kenpaki really became more and more courageous as he fought. The counterfeit Zaraki Kenpaki just imagined was no match for the scarred body. After a few short confrontations, the counterfeit was cut down directly. Seeing such a scene, Gremi was also stunned. What's happening here? A complete Zaraki Kenpaki can't beat a scarred Zaraki Kenpaki? Is there something wrong with my imagination? How did he know that it wasn't that his imagination had a problem? It was just that the current Zaraki Kenpaki had stimulated the potential in his body after being hacked together. But the Zaraki Kenpaki just imagined does not have the bonus of this layer of buff, so naturally it cannot cut Zaraki Kenpaki. Gremi, who couldn't figure this out, didn't know where the problem was. Looking at Zaraki Kenpaki, who was already red-eyed at this moment, Gremi, who was originally just a fantasy, also started to tremble with fright. It seems that he has completely forgotten the fact that he will not be chopped. Zaraki Kenpaki struggled with a deep slash on his shoulder and endured the blood rushing all over his body, and walked towards Gremi step by step. That posture, like that of a prison blood demon god, makes people daunting and their scalps tingling. At this moment, Zaraki Kenpaki is more like Shinigami from hell, and the Zanpei Kuto seems to be a scythe for harvesting life. Che, it's really tasteless. With the sword up and down, Zanpei Kuto of Zaraki Kenpaki once again passed through the body of Gremi. Looking at the undamaged Gremi standing in front of him, Zaraki Kenpaki's expression became blank again. What's the situation? Is the enemy in front of you really invincible? After a short trance just now, Gremi also adjusted his state. Accompanied by a golden flash, Zaraki Kenpaki exactly the same as in front of him appeared on the scene again. The same blood, the same scars. Of course, there are also eyes full of passion and blood. TCH, you're actually enlightened? Then, let's chop it up. As the two sides hacked each other, the fluctuation of the battle became more and more fierce. The captains round saw it in their eyes, but they also had expectations in their eyes. Although they knew Zaraki Kenpaki's attributes of being more and more courageous as he fought, they never saw the true power of this madman. Especially Unohana Retsu, there is a hint of other meaning in the eyes. You must know that Unohana Retsu noticed something different many years ago. Zaraki Kenpaki actually has stronger power in his body, but he gradually sealed himself during the battle. In order to enjoy the fun of fighting, the real power in the body is forgotten. Even as Kenpaki himself at the time, he felt very novel. After many years, I don't know how much power Zaraki Kenpaki has accumulated in his body. If this part of potential can be stimulated in this battle, that would be great. With this in mind, Unohana Retsu continued to watch the fight between the two. The original Zaraki Kenpaki also had some unfinished business, but at this moment, he found that his opponent's strength has also improved so tyrannically. It seems that your imagination is really interesting. Very good. Just please me. Zaraki Kenpaki brandished a big knife and continued to slash, but the opponent did not hide or evade, and chose to attack directly while carrying Zaraki Kenpaki's slash. Both of them gave up their defense and slashed, and the injuries of both sides also increased rapidly. However, every time when the counterfeit can't stand up, Gremi will refresh his imagination and keep his puppet at the most powerful fighting capacity at all times. It didn't take long for Zaraki Kenpaki to be hacked incapacitated. When the two sides slashed each other for the last time, Zaraki Kenpaki's heart was directly pierced and the counterfeit was instantly killed. Zaraki Kenpaki, who was lying on the ground, instantly felt the icy surroundings, but at this moment, Gremi imagined a Zaraki Kenpaki who was the most powerful just before the battle. At this moment, the counterfeit Zaraki Kenpaki was covered in blood, holding a slender Zanpei Kuto, standing in front of the real Zaraki Kenpaki, staring blankly at Zaraki Kenpaki on the ground, as if he were an executioner, waiting for someone to issue an order for execution. The dying Zaraki Kenpaki also struggled to look at the imposters around him, and murmured helplessly with a wry smile, "Vertical bar, is it all over?" At this moment, Zaraki Kenpaki seemed to be able to hear his heartbeat very clearly. The power to hear the heartbeat with my own ears is getting weaker and weaker. This feeling is still very strange. It seems to have come to the end of life, and it will stop beating at any time. Is it really over, servant? Although his heart was full of fear, the curly yellow-haired kid hadn't been hacked to death by himself. However, one's own energy seems to have been exhausted. Who can lend themselves some strength? Thinking of this, Zaraki Kenpaki clenched the Zanpei Kuto in his hand. At this critical moment, Senju Kusanai stood up, looked at Zaraki Kenpaki on the ground and smiled. Chapter 349, Infinite Imagination. Senju Kusanai looked at Kenpaki who was full of despair, and said with a playful expression, "Isn't Captain Zaraki planning to give up?" While speaking, Senju Kusanai had already arrived at Zaraki Kenpaki's position, looking down at the man lying on the ground like a dead dog in front of him. Laughed, "Captain Zaraki, are you ready to give up? Don't you want to kill that opponent? What you call enjoying fighting, is it just simply cutting each other? If the enemy has other abilities and refuses to attack you, will you kneel down and beg for mercy? Couldn't this be the way of the sword you've always practiced?" Speaking of this, Senju Kusanai's tone has become very harsh. Hearing Senju Starry Knight's reprimand, Zaraki Kenpaki felt weak all over, and even slowly closed his eyes. However, thinking back to what Senju Kusanai said just now, Zaraki Kenpaki couldn't be calm for a long time. Yeah, fighting isn't just a sword fight. If the opponent has other abilities, so they don't want to slash with me, can I still kneel down and beg others to slash each other? If you think about it carefully, this kind of picture is really ugly. 187. Thinking of this, Zaraki Kenpaki's almost exhausted heartbeat became strong again. As if feeling the changes in Zaraki Kenpaki, Senju Starry Knight continued to say, "Your opponent is that girly-haired kid, not yourself as he imagined. The reason why you lie here like a dog is entirely because your strength is not strong enough. It's not enough to kill the yellow-haired kid's body. What are you supposed to do? You should reflect on yourself." After Senju Kusanai finished speaking, he used the effect of Senju's power to return to his original position. However, everything just now seemed to have never happened. The counterfeit Zaraki Kenpaki in front of him raised his sword and was about to instantly kill the real Zaraki Kenpaki on the ground. But Zaraki Kenpaki at this moment has figured out what Senju Kusanai said just now. Yeah, if you don't have enough strength, you should increase your strength. In a real battle, the outcome is determined only by strength. I can't beat it because my strength is too weak. I want to be stronger. I want to be stronger. Accompanied by a strong roar, the power of Zaraki Kenpaki also broke through the sky in an instant. The golden Ryatsu is like the realm of the gods that fell from the sky. Zaraki Kenpaki, who was bathed in it, also recalled his original ability. "Sure enough, my Zanpei Kuto also has a name. Sorry for dusting your power over the years." Ignoring Zanpei Kuto who was waving towards him in front of him, Zaraki Kenpaki caressed the blade of his sword calmly, full of affection. Until this moment, he didn't think of his loyal partner. "Yes, you have a name too. Audiobook. Devour it." Nozarashi, accompanied by a powerful Ryatsu soaring into the sky. The entire Jingling court seems to be shrouded in this golden Ryatsu minister. It was also at this time that Zanpei Kuto of Zaraki Kenpaki completed the first Shikai. The original Zanpei Kuto was Kenpaki who heard the call of the dead on the battlefield. This Zanpei Kuto came to Kenpaki in a sealed state. The original appearance is that the handguard is a three-dimensional polygon, the blade is slightly uneven, and the handle is wrapped with white cloth, as if it can be liberated at any time. However, after Zaraki Kenpaki's liberation speech just now, the original long and narrow blade suddenly rose sharply. There is an arc-shaped line near the handle, and a long-handled knife with long tassels falls from the hole at the end. In terms of volume alone, it is even more exaggerated than the original Zanjutsu. The imposter's hand was up and down, just in time to meet Zaraki Kenpaki's Shikai no Zarashi. When the swords collided, there was a mournful scream instantly. Almost at the same time, the counterfeit Zanpei Kuto split in two and shattered on the spot. Not only that, but the imaginary body also disappeared instantly. Can't see any traces on the scene, just left a cloud of blood mist. Seeing Zaraki Kenpaki like this, the little boy with blonde curly hair and short hair couldn't help but smile. I really didn't expect that a dying person could burst out with such a powerful force. However, if I continued to imagine an illusion with the same strength as your current state, how should you respond? Thinking of this, another burst of golden light flashed. Almost at the same time, an identical fake Zaraki Kenpaki with a huge machete appeared in front of everyone. Seeing the exact same self in front of him, Zaraki Kenpaki sighed helplessly with a wry smile. It took so much pains to please me. Stinky boy, are you ready to slash with me to your heart's content? While speaking, Zaraki Kenpaki began to burst out with an imposing reiatsu all over his body. Gremi, who was affected, only felt that his body was about to be torn apart. When imagining, he obviously strengthened his own body. However, even the strengthened body imagined can't resist the opponent's reiatsu. Chapter 350, Gremi, who considers himself a genius. Gremi was stunned by the situation in front of him. After realizing how powerful the reiatsu of the two were, he immediately imagined an invisible barrier in front of him. And the imaginary level is an absolutely safe level that can resist the full blow of the two people in front of the Lord. Sure enough, after the invisible armband took effect, Gremi, who had felt the trembling of reiatsu, became very calm again at this moment. Senju Starry Night not far away noticed this. Can't help but sigh with emotion. This kid's ability is indeed against the sky. If he can possess such a heaven-defying ability, wouldn't he be happier than Wang Yu, who is a harem beauty? Although the beauties that Zanpei Kuto can transform into in Wang Yu's residence are also very beautiful, but those are after all the materialized Zanpei Kuto. If I can imagine 100,000 real people, I don't know if my waist can bear it. Thinking of this, Senju Kusanai also tightened his waist, and then quickly dismissed such exaggerated thoughts. Then turned his attention to the battlefield, and found that two Zaraki Kenpaki had already started cutting each other. After Shikai, Zaraki Kenpaki is not only a change in Zanpei Kuto's appearance, but also an increase in power that ordinary people can't imagine. At this moment, Zanpei Kuto could no longer use his body to fight hard, otherwise he might be hacked and exploded at any time. Although the attacks of the two were open and closed, they were all Zanpei Kuto's mutual attacks. The continuous force collisions made the souls of the two people tremble a lot. Continuing to chop down, I am afraid that the soul will also be in danger of bursting at any time. As if he didn't expect Zaraki Kenpaki to be so tyrannical, Xiaomi was really scared. Any reckless man is so ruthless, and there are so many captain-level people behind him. Can I really smash the entire Soul Society with my own power? Gremi, who was originally full of confidence, also hesitated psychologically. But then there was a sneer. It seems that I really underestimated Captain Zaraki Kenpaki this time. I only imagined a Zaraki Kenpaki of comparable strength, as if there was no way to win directly. That being the case, I'll have to imagine another Zaraki Kenpaki of equal strength. As soon as the words fell, a gust of wind suddenly rose on the scene, and the golden reiatsu burst out instantly. The light faded, and the third Zaraki Kenpaki actually appeared on the scene. Not only that, Zaraki Kenpaki who appeared later also carried the huge Zanpei Kuto no Zarashi, and his power was not weaker than the first two. When seeing the third self, Zaraki Kenpaki also had a headache. He didn't expect Gremi in front of him to have such an ability. Originally, I only thought that I could copy a counterfeit product, but I didn't expect to be able to make an additional one. This gets a little tricky. TCH, the brat is quite capable. After complaining, Zaraki Kenpaki is no longer reserved. It seems that this matter cannot continue to drag on. While speaking, Zaraki Kenpaki carried the huge Nozarashi on his shoulders, with murderous intent in his eyes. Bankai. Accompanied by Zaraki Kenpaki's Bankai, the surrounding air was instantly filled with a gigantic golden Reiatsu. Nozarashi, who was still huge just now, also broke in the middle because he couldn't bear Bankai's own strength, and became a broken knife. And Zaraki Kenpaki is red all over at this moment, as if his whole body is full of battle. There are two black lines from the forehead to the bottom of the eyes, and two horns grow directly above the forehead, and the appearance has become like a ghost. Seeking flowers. 0. The original Zaraki Kenpaki couldn't bear this level of power at all, but after devouring the spirit skeleton Zaraki Kenpaki, his body's strength has also grown extremely terrifying. The power that was originally unbearable can be suppressed at this moment. At least he won't lose his mind and become an instinctive fighting monster like before. However, although it will not completely lose consciousness, this level of strength is also unbearable for ordinary people. Zaraki Kenpaki, who was originally straight-minded, now only has simple recklessness left. 0. Looking at the two imposters in front of him, Zaraki Kenpaki waved his hand directly. Zanpei Kuto after Bankai cut the two into pieces in an instant. Then he looked at Gremi in front of him coldly, and murmured, kill you, I am going to kill you. This originally low voice was like a whisper from hell at this moment. Even with the ability of the holy word Gremi, who can destroy the world with his imagination, is absolutely unable to imagine the terrifying power of Zaraki Kenpaki at this moment. How is this possible? I obviously dreamed up 2 Zaraki Kenpaki with equal strength, but I didn't expect the strength of the other party to continue to increase. However, at this moment, the flustered Gremi also temporarily organized his thoughts. No problem. No problem. Isn't it Zaraki Kenpaki after Bankai? As long as I use my imagination to create a Bankai Kenpaki with the same power, won't all problems be solved? Thinking of this, Gremi felt like a genius. If you like this audiobook, subscribe the channel for more videos like this. And join my Patreon if you want to support me, link in the description. Leave some comment and let me know if you guys like this story, or you have a web novel you like and want to hear its audiobook. I will be happy to create them for you. Please like, share, and leave a comment on the video.